Hello, my creative friends, and welcome to another episode of the Screenwriting Show. This is the show where eventually, one day, sooner or later, we will do a deep dive into a different aspect of screenwriting every week. So eventually, my goal is to cover literally hundreds of different topics, deep dive into each one of them. What I'm trying to do is then take all that, turn it into a resource that will be sort of like a mega resource library where as you're writing, as you're running into trouble with this aspect of your story or that aspect of your story, or you're looking back over your draft and you want to strengthen this part of it or improve that part of it, or you didn't even know about this part over there, that you can simply go into that resource library, find the thing that is suitable to your project or that gives you some ideas or inspiration or triggers you in some direction, and you'll have all the tools and resources that you need for that. Now, that is something called Essential Screenwriting. We're working on building that now. The Screenwriting Show here is we're going to be talking about those different modules as we go through to discuss, to get questions from you. What do you need? What do you want? What would you like to see? What don't you know or don't you understand? We'll do the deep dive here on this show for free, go as far into it as we possibly can, and then use that as a sort of idea spark or something that will trigger, okay, these are the weaknesses that writers are having. These are the challenges that they're having, and then focus, zero in on those things, and then develop the resource out of that. So my hope is that I can give you something of value for free, that I can give you something of value that helps you along the way. And then in the process, we can actually go on and develop something that is valuable for everyone. So I'm hoping to have an announcement about that either next week or the week after. The challenge that I've had all along, as you may know, if you're a regular watching the show, is that each week we're trying to get on top of these this module work and really designing these ideas and these episodes. And sort of, I don't just want to ramble off the top of my head for the topic on the show itself prior to the module. I want to actually make this show a very deep dive education unto itself. So we're trying to plan these episodes out. I basically decided to push all that for a couple of weeks so that we're going to start doing that a couple of weeks from now so we can design a bunch of them ahead of time. We can get sort of way out in front of it. And then in that way, each week, we know that we're going to do a deep dive into a different aspect of screenwriting. So until that happens, what we're doing is having an open conversation about all things screenwriting. So if this is your first time joining us, hello, welcome. Nice to have you. Please feel free to chime in and say hello. And we will we will take it from there. But today, I wasn't actually sure if we were going to have an episode today. I try to do these every Thursday, but I've sort of committed to 3 out of 4 Thursdays a month. This month, turns out we're doing each and every Thursday, in part because I have a meeting with a very successful past student, participant, member of Fast Screenplay, who has gone on to write and sell several projects, and I'm going to be doing an interview with him here. So I needed to do that after this is over anyway. But there's a ton of stuff. And I'm running into a problem that writers always tell me they have as well. And that is that you don't have time to do any writing. The question that I will ask you today is this. Between last week and this week, how much actual writing did you get done? Did you design your story? Did you take your idea and flesh it out? Did you take that fleshed out story and refine it into some sort of outline or treatment or roadmap for the writing process? Did you actually go through and blast out a draft or a part of a draft or a few scenes? Did you have a first draft or a third draft and start through that rewrite process and actually going through and improving your work? Have you devoted time to screenwriting every single day of this past week, or 3 days a week, or one day this past week? Did you devote multiple hours each day, or did you devote a couple of minutes each day? Or did you, like most writers, not do anything this past week? Life got busy, life got in the way, the challenges arise. They always do, and they always will. If anyone knows busy, I know busy. I have about half the time that I used to have to devote to all this stuff at the moment. I'm trying to build 3 different things. I'm writing a new book. I'm building a new resource. I'm trying to redesign the marketing plans and trying to help figure out what writers want and help get you what you want in a way that's mutually beneficial for us so that we can go build the indie film studio. I'm trying to carve out time each week to work on the actual production and distribution side of the big plan that I've got here, the big strategy that I'm working toward. Along the way, over the past couple of weeks, I have found a financial opportunity for writers, a way for writers to make money as they develop their skills. But to build that mechanism, it's going to take some time and it's going to take some devoted attention and effort. I want to claw back time that I'm devoting to teaching all this stuff or helping writers along the way, sort of try to systematize all that so that I can focus on building these bigger things. The challenge that I always have is that this keeps pulling me back because we don't have enough people joining us, because we don't have enough people helping build it, because we don't have enough machine moving forward with all that. It just takes time away from doing all this other stuff because I have to do all that stuff. Well, that's my plight, but what's yours? Do you have some sort of similar situation? You've got a day job and you have to pay the bills, so you have to do that day job. You have to make money somehow, so you keep getting pulled back into that job, and then you don't have any time to put towards your screenwriting. You don't have any time to keep developing those skills. Well, we have to find some way to get past that. We have to find some way to keep writing and keep moving forward, keep developing those skills regardless. It's the whole reason I built my system, Fast Screenplay, the way that I did, so that all you have to do, you don't have to worry about the whole picture. You don't have to worry about writing and rewriting and making it perfect and all that. The system is designed. You just have to immerse into the next daily action step. If you just keep next day, just, okay, what's today's step? Do that step. Okay, today, what's the next step? Do that step. Okay, what's the next step? Do that step. If you just keep doing that, you're going to move through the process itself of finding your idea, nailing it, turning it into the best possible idea, developing that, growing that into its most compelling possible version of its story, writing that into an extraordinary first draft, rewriting that until it's a solid story, exactly the story you wanted to tell, refining and polishing it into a page-turner reader experience the reader who picks up your script cannot put down, testing it, making sure it lands the way you want it to land with the reader, and getting notes and feedback to ensure that experience happens. If it's not quite landing right, you go back through and you refine that further until you know exactly how it's going to land, and then you find and connect with your project's ideal producer. You do all this without even thinking about it, because all you're focused on is taking a simple action each day. Now, whether you join me in that system or not, obviously I would love to have you join me, but if you don't join me in that system, you have to find some way to achieve the same outcome, to keep taking little actions every single day, to keep immersing in the next step, regardless of the big picture. I don't know about you, but one of the things that always trips me up is I'm so busy thinking about the big picture. I'm so busy thinking about how to make this happen or make this perfect, or this little action, it didn't turn out quite right. That's not really the direction I want to go. And what's the knock-on effect of that going to be? At the end of the day, we can always rewrite. We can always improve something. We can always make it better later. What we have to do is take action today. We have to take little, tiny, small, productive, forward motion actions every single day. And if you're not doing it, why are you not doing it? What's getting in your way? Let's talk about that today. Let's focus on what are those obstacles? What are those challenges? What's making it difficult for you? Is it a head game? Is it some problem that you're not feeling good enough, or you don't feel like it's realistic enough, or people in your life are telling you that it's not realistic, and so you should really stop wasting your time with that stupid screenwriting stuff, which, by the way, they're wrong. There is extraordinary opportunity here. There is extraordinary possibility for writers, no matter where in the world you are, no matter what level you're currently starting at. If anyone is telling you this is a waste of time or stop doing this or any of that kind of stuff, even if that person is you, You have to stop that voice. You have to close it off. You have to turn it off entirely because, yes, this is absolutely doable. This is very achievable. Anyone, anywhere, if you have an aptitude for language or you want to learn or you're willing to put in the time and energy to develop those skills, I believe anyone can do it. There are opportunities at every level for wherever you are. The challenge is, it takes time to get good at that. So how do we get good at that? We have to stop that negative head voice that's telling us not to take action today. We've got to take action anyway, despite that voice. And we've got to make sure that we're moving forward. Because if you don't take that action, you don't do that work, you don't incrementally improve, you're never going to develop the skills. So I don't want to make you feel bad. I don't want to shame or embarrass or humiliate anyone. But if you haven't done anything since last week, if you haven't done anything since the start of this series, if you've just been absorbing all this information and feeling good about all the insights that I'm sharing and the wisdom that you're acquiring, it does absolutely no good whatsoever if you're not implementing it, if you're not taking action with it, if you're not putting it to good use. Because we have these neural pathways in our brains. We have neurons that fire up in these elaborate arrays, which are the ideas that we have, which pull ideas from our memories, which pull ideas from our life experience, which pull ideas from our dreams. They pull all this stuff and we have these ideas. And that idea is there for a second and then it just disappears. And the next idea pops up in our life. What we have to do is we have to develop those neural pathways of taking that idea and turning it into something tangible. Just the simple act of taking the idea and turning it into something tangible is a neural pathway. It's a neural connection that we have to build. If you've never done it before, the neurons are trying to find their way. And of course, what you write is going to be a little clumsy and it's probably not going to be sellable and it's probably not going to be good by those types of arbitrary standards. But the more you do it and you start to see how to do it more effectively, okay, sentence structure should probably work like this. Oh, a story works like this. I try to write a story. I'm not very good at it. I'm clumsy at it. Those neurons don't quite know how to do what they're trying to do. But as you start to work on your story, as you start to develop your skills, those neural pathways go, okay, this is how you tell a story. Okay, this is how you frame a sentence so that it conveys the idea that you have in your head and the reader actually can pick up on that. It does that by whatever skill you're learning, whatever you're developing, right? Those neural pathways get stronger. So then when you go back to do it again, well, guess what? You're a little bit better because your pathways know how to do it. Well, then then you start to see, oh, you know what? I can make it even better by adding this element or taking this technique or adding this skill. And as you add those skills and build upon it, those neural pathways get stronger and stronger and more powerful. And what you create intuitively is better than it ever was at the start. If you don't actually do that work and you don't take that action, you're not building those neural pathways. You're not getting any stronger. You're not getting any better at it. You cannot improve. You cannot certainly become intuitive at the process, but you're just not even going to improve in general if you don't take that action. So I know I talk about it all the time. I know I rail about it all the time. I know we're here talking about it yet again. But ultimately, it is essential that you take some form of action every day. So if the problem is not your headspace is there. I know I need to do this. I know I want to do this. I can feel myself improve when I do take action. Is it some sort of physical obstacle that's getting in your way of taking action consistently? I don't have a place to write. I don't have time to write. I don't have a part of my world that I can carve out. Some people are able to write and just immerse into that creative space on a kitchen table with lots of kids and other people running around, right? Other people need that space away from everyone. I just need some quiet space so that I can just let my brain go into whatever scenario or focus on whatever thought or technique I'm focused on today, whatever it might be. If you don't know which one you work best in, you need to try them all out. You need to sample things. You need to see what's going to work and be more effective for you. Maybe you think you need all sorts of quiet time. You need a 2-hour block of just, I'm going to write now. And in fact, you might actually do better in a more chaotic environment, going to the local coffee shop and banging away on your screenplay or outlining your project, or walking along in a park, or going on a nature walk somewhere with your dictaphone and just talking out whatever your story might be. And when somebody walks by, just pretend like you're talking to someone else on the phone. Nobody will care, right? Find some way, some strategy to keep taking little bits of action forward every single day. So, what is your reason for not writing? What is your reason for not moving forward? What's the challenge that you have? Is it mental? Is it physical? Is it time? Is it something else? You don't have the skill set. You don't quite know what you're doing or how to go about doing it. Well, hopefully we can cover some of that here. You can always join me in the weekend screenwriting workshop. You can always join me in Fast Screenplay. Soon you'll be able to get essential screenwriting, all this kind of stuff, right? So, at the end of the day, my stream, I don't know if you guys remember from previously, but it's looking like my stream is telling me that this is not continuing forward. I think it is. Tell me, am I still going? Or are we stuck? Let me know, because on my screen here, it's showing me as being stuck. But in any event, okay, so let's have a quick look at who's here, what's going on. And let's talk about if you're struggling to write or what have you. Let's jump into that. I know that we had some questions early on before we started that I will go ahead and address real quick. Hunter says, is it better to write your logline before your screenplay is completed, or wait to write the logline after the screenplay is completed? Let's see. A few hiccups, otherwise good. Okay. Let me see if I can refresh this on my end and see if that's going to do anything for me. All right. Sorry about that. Jeff, is it better to write your logline before your screenplay is completed, or wait to write the logline after the screenplay is completed? The way I see it, there are two different kinds of loglines. One is a development logline, and one is a marketing logline. Most people who talk about loglines and teach screenwriting and loglines and all this stuff, they think it's the same thing. And it's really just the logline for the project. The way that I focus on it, and the way that I talk about it and deal with it, is we develop a logline for the development of the project, so that as you're developing your project, you're developing it, you have a through line that's going to be pushing you through, so that you know what to include and what not to include, and how you're straying off the way. If you understand the marketing strategy that I promote, it's one that I developed from the producer's perspective. I looked at 30,000 project submissions, read 7,000 screenplays, saw what writers were doing well and what they were doing poorly, and basically identified the way to capture a producer's attention, hook them on your project, pull them in, make them want to read your script, and then dazzle them, is what I call the promise progression. And you do that by creating a logline that hooks me, that is something that makes my imagination pop. I see the possibility in this project and I want to know more. And so that's when I reach out and say, okay, send me your one-page synopsis. Now, your one-page synopsis has to exceed my expectation that I imagined from your logline. So if your one-page synopsis goes, wow, they went even further. This is even better than I was thinking it was just from hearing that logline. Then I'm going to go, send me the script. I got to read this thing. And then if the screenplay exceeds the expectations that I had from understanding that one-page synopsis story, well, I am going to desperately want to know this writer and work with this writer, because this is a writer who has proven that they can exceed my promise, at the promise that they've made at every step of the way. Now, the reason I tell you all this is because the reason I believe that you have two different log lines, or that strategically, as creatively, you should focus on having two different log lines, one for the writing development part of the process and one for the marketing part of the process, is because if you don't know what your logline is promising, or if the promise that your story made as you were developing a story to a logline, if you can't exceed that promise in what you deliver in the synopsis and then again in the script, if you can't exceed their expectations, you're going to have a very difficult time capturing a producer's attention and actually winning them over. Most people who talk about loglines are talking about it in some arcane educational context. They're talking about a logline as some piece of the puzzle. They don't understand what it's like from my side of the table, where literally all I look at are loglines. Or this is what I did when we had open submissions, which we stopped a couple of years ago. We were looking through thousands of logline submissions only. And the reason I did that was because originally I read all the scripts that came in and gradually realized I don't need to read these whole scripts. I need to read 10 pages. Oh, no, I only need to read 5. Oh, I only need to read 1. Oh, I really only need to read the synopsis. Actually, I really only need to read the logline. So that's the way it whittled down to that. And that's when I realized you have to hook them. You have to exceed the producers or director, actor, whoever you're sending it to. You have to exceed their imagination with your logline. And then that logline has to take their imagination somewhere, hook them into your project. And then the story has to exceed that. So if you have a logline that you wrote that you're writing your story to, and then you try to go send that out into the world, that's not part of a marketing strategy. So you are probably not going to be making the most compelling promise with it. It's probably not going to fit strategically into this process of winning over a producer and capturing their attention. So that's why I distinctly believe and teach and wholeheartedly, emphatically suggest and recommend that you focus on the 2 different kinds of loglines. So hopefully that makes sense. We can get into more of that as we go along, but that's one of my big points of differentiation with other people out there. Is most people out there who are teaching you about loglines have never been on the receiving end looking for projects to physically produce and reviewing loglines through that lens. They're looking at it through a purely academic, how have I best captured the story in one sentence, or what's the most compelling part of the story in one sentence. And all that stuff is, it's academically interesting, but that's not really what the logline's about. That's not what we're trying to hook people with. Sola says, I just started writing my screen. Sola is our 14-year-old friend. I think you're 14. Is that right, Sola? You have written here what your story is about. I'm not going to share it because, people can read the chat and find that. I'm a big believer that we should not share our ideas publicly, generally speaking. We'll do some of it on this show in future episodes. Maybe I might read this this synopsis that Dimitri and the guys wrote on previous chats. But because once you put the ideas out there on something like this, it goes into the public domain and anyone can just read that and take that idea and run with it. The idea cannot be copyrighted. The execution of the idea is what's copyrighted. So if we have a story about so-and-so who murders such and such, right? That idea can't be copyrighted, but your way of doing it with these characters in this situation and these scenes unfolding, that's what can get copyrighted. So we really want to protect our ideas early on, in my opinion. I'm also, as someone on the receiving end, I'm a little reluctant to review stories and ideas unless they have been expressly stated that you could take this and share this with the world. I don't care if somebody else takes it, simply because if we're working on something already, I don't want to know. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear people's story ideas in case it's similar to something I'm already working on, because then I will never be able to escape the perception that I heard it from you and I took it. And that's not the case. I would never do such a thing. In dealing with 15,000 writers over the years at this point, I've never gone close to that. So that's one of the reasons why it's so hard to get your script, to be able to submit your script to a producer or production company, and why companies won't generally look at unsolicited content, is because they don't want that liability. If it's similar to something I'm already doing, I cannot have anything that looks like I saw yours and went off and decided to go do it. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so Hunter says, Jeff, how often do producers have to rush a production due to time limits, financing, rights? I'm not quite sure what the question means, but I will say that every single production I've ever worked on has always had to rush at certain points along the way. It's like the reality of production is that you do months or years of preparation for the shoot, for example, and then you're squeezing the shoot into as little time as possible, as much time as it needs to make the thing as far as the dollars will stretch. But you want to try to limit it as much as possible, because if you could, you would just take years to work. Like, you just sit there and you know what, let's do another take. You know what, let's do another take. Let's try another angle. Let's try it at a second location. Or it's like, it could easily grow into this enormously unruly thing. So you want to try to really limit it, and you want to try to make a tight production schedule that's very budget conscious and budget focused. And so as a result of doing that, you tend to be very limited on time. So you tend to, we spend a little too much time in the early couple of weeks. So now we have less time in the later couple of weeks, and we have more to do. And so certain scenes will always run into challenges. You had some problems or some big expense that came up that you didn't think about before. And then that you have to take the budget out of that and put it over there. And then that limits your budget on this stuff over here. I mean, that's the producer's job, really, is the balancing act, the juggling act of all the different resources they have available. Can you get other resources? Can you get better resources for the same money, or maybe some free things, or all that kind of deal making and moving the shells around? Rights issues or other, that's a whole other discussion. There's the music rights, there's location rights, there's rights to use people's likeness, there's all sorts of stuff. So, I mean, that's what a producer's job really is. So that's, how often? Every time. Boston Joe says, I just finished a good block of writing. Happy with my progress. Good stuff, Joe. I'll throw that up there. Let's see. Hunter said, Jeff, how many studios have writers writing up to and during production? Let's throw this one on here. How often do studios have writers writing up to and during production, even shooting sometimes? I would say every time. Again, it's a similar situation. You got to understand, a screenplay is not a piece of literary fiction. It's not something that is set in stone, or something that the audience, it's not even designed to be read and appreciated and revered by cinephiles and audience members and, the literati. It is, is that a word? I don't know where that word came from. Anyway, a screenplay is designed to be turned into a film. It's its only purpose. It's the only reason to write a screenplay, is to hopefully see that project get turned into a film, or, win the attention of the people who would help you do that on some other project. Right. So as a result, rewrites always happen, and rewrites always happen up to production. If you cast an actor that's not quite what the script writer initially intended, maybe you have to change some of the scenes around, or make little tweaks here and there. Sometimes production can't afford to shoot on a moving train, so instead they shoot in a moving car, right, or whatever. So you have to change things around like that. Inclement weather might change, what you've shot or what you have access to, or you don't have the budget to do big green screen work or shoot lots of visual effects and stuff. So things change around like that all the time. So all that. Debbie says, hey Jeff. Hey, Debbie. Because time. Okay, so now we're getting into why are you not writing? Because time. Yep, that's the big reason. Let's see. Okay, Tobias says, hello, Jeff. Yes, been working every day and night, research and rewrites before returning to fast. Fantastic. Good stuff, Tobias. Let's see. All right. John says, lend me some of your energy, Jeff. All right, here's how to have some of Jeff's energy. Ready? Okay, have a vision. Have something very clear and very specific that you're working toward, that you honestly believe if you can get that thing, you can achieve that thing, it's going to change everything, not just your own life, not just your financial situation or the world of your loved ones, but change things for other people, other writers, society, the world. Have some grand thing that you're pushing toward. I really genuinely believe this. I'm not just being facetious or jokey. Hey, I answered the meaning of life question a couple of weeks ago, so of course I'm going to answer this one too. The way to have that energy and keep that energy going is to really know what you're striving for. Know your why. Know why you want it. Why it's essential that you get it now. Because if you have that, if this is the very first step in fast screenplay, is start with why, basically. Understand the end, see the end before you begin. The reason it is see the end before you begin is because if you understand where you're going or where you're trying to go, or the reason why you're trying to get there, that will serve as your fuel and as your motivation and the thing that's pushing you forward through it. If you don't have that, if you just go, it'd be fun to write a screenplay, I will tell you right now, if it would be fun to write a screenplay, you will not succeed at this game. Because if it's just fun to write a screenplay, as soon as it stops being fun, that fuel will be spent. That will be gone. And you will just no longer have the energy to do the hard parts of the process. If you have something very specific that you're working toward. For me, I'm trying to build an indie film studio. For me, I want to make multiple films each year. Initially a couple, eventually dozens. The big picture is eventually hundreds of films every single year. How am I going to do that? I'm not going to do that by myself. I'm only going to do that if you guys are fired up enough to actually go through the entire lengthy, arduous, challenging, difficult, complex, many moving part process of really building the skills and figuring out the nuance to not only do that, but eventually make doing it intuitive. Because until you guys can do it and make it intuitive, it's not going to be that second nature thing. You're not going to be ready and prepared for the development setting of, okay, we're ready to do the writer's room. We're ready to create projects. We need you guys to be at a certain level to be able to do that so that we can actually develop projects we can realistically go out and make. Most writers are not there. Most writers are miles from that. I have interacted now at this point with somewhere between 12 and 15,000 writers around the world at this point in my life. One where I've interacted with them by name, Jeff and so. I don't think there's 1% of writers that have that kind of skill set. And so because they don't have that kind of skill set, and because I know from the vision that I'm trying to build that I need them to have it, how do we get them to it? If I can't be excited about my vision and getting you to join me to get to my vision, you're certainly never going to get excited enough to actually do the hard work of developing those skills so that we can mutually benefit from getting to my vision. So anyway, there you are. I've lent you some of my energy. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that helps. All right. Let's see. What do we have? Developing an older idea, Acts 1 and 2 refined, working on a new version of Act 3. That's cool. Those are now. I would say, Debbie, when it comes to actually moving forward with your progress, how specific and measurable is that progress? Because one of the things that I find is that, and I know this from my own personal experience, is you have all these things you want to do. In fact, I've talked to you, Debbie, about it through volunteering stuff and all that. I have like 4 or 5 huge things that I'm working on. And if I make just a tiny little bit of progress on each of those 3 or 4 or 5 things, I can look back and say, well, I made this progress and this progress on these 5 things, but it's such small progress that am I actually moving forward on those things? And one of the things about screenwriting, and I think intermediate writers especially, but beginner writers as well, advanced writers as well, but especially intermediate writers, they know enough about the craft. They know enough about the 3 acts or the building characters or subplots or subtext. Like I can list all those things and go, oh yeah, I know about that. I know about that. I know about that. That they have enough knowledge that they can fool themselves into thinking that they have a strong enough metric for moving forward, for actually being able to identify how they've improved week to week. Right. So what we need to really do, what it's really important to do is to go beyond just, I've done a couple little bits of this. How much time have you given yourself each week? How much actual forward progress are you making? Now, this is not some scientific mechanical thing here. So art has to flow a little bit. It's not about how many hours you spent each week. What I'm getting at is how much are you actually putting toward it? The real question becomes the real thing that I want to know is not just how much time have you put towards it, but how much have you put towards it in comparison to how much you really know for a fact you should have put toward it and perhaps could have put towards it. Because I think that's probably a better way to look at it and define it for yourself. Because I know, for example, when I have a 4-hour block of work and I do definitely make some progress on 2 or 3 different things, but I probably also only needed 2 of those hours to get that progress done. Could I have structured my day differently or changed my focus or improved my process to get 3 hours worth of actual work done in that time, or all 4 of those hours and just really get further, faster, it's an internal thing. You're judging it on your own, right? There's nobody else. I'm not going to be the one going, you need to spend more time on it. But we know within, right? So I guess that's more or less what I'm asking. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. So Tobias, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. I always appreciate when you guys do that. Not necessary and certainly not required. As we know, I go through and I'll answer everybody's questions while we're still doing these open question things, but very much appreciated. So thank you for that. Let's see. Victoria says, do you start a pitch by comparing your story with a recent film? Is it important to tell the whole story or stop at the climax? Thanks. Okay, so if you're talking about a pitch, so you're probably talking about it's Jaws meets Alien or something like that, right? Or it's like The Godfather meets Men in Black or whatever, right? That's kind of the cliche way to pitch a project. And I always believe it's the lazy way to pitch a project. If you, what a writer's trying to do when they pitch a project by crossing 2 films or invoking another film is when there's a film that we've all seen, we all have a sense of its tone, its style, its feel, its sort of humor level, its dramatic sensibility. By invoking the 2 titles, you're shorthanding what the tone would be, what the style of the film would be. You're sort of stealing from those projects for yourself, imbue your own project with the qualities of some of those other projects. Now, that has always been a moderately successful way of pitching. It's easy for the listener. It's easy for the writer. I would argue it's not a very good way to do it, though, because it's very easy for the listener of that pitch to make too much of an association with that project, with the famous project that you're invoking, and not be able to imagine how it's going to apply to your project, or who's going to take those different, what their perception of King Kong was versus your perception of what King Kong was. Maybe you're using it in the giant ape way, but they're thinking of it in the film noir way, right? Like they may take the wrong element and see it in the mashed up idea. The only way that really works, or is something that I'd ever advise, would be if it really is a direct, like, if it really is a directly accessible way to encapsulate what your own story is. I think it's so much better to learn how to capture someone's attention with your pitch, how to set the stage quickly, how to paint the picture of a world, how to inject a character that we might care about, and a transformation that we might want to watch, and just get a sense of what that story would be. I think that's always going to be much more powerful, because it also serves you better as a writer. If you can pitch your own project without having to invoke someone else's, then you are demonstrating your skill as a writer. If you're invoking 2 other projects and selling your pitch based on that, unless they already know your work from previously, if that's the way you're going to go in and try to do your initial pitch, all I really see is someone who doesn't have their own ideas, and so they're just somebody who pulls from other people and takes it as their own. So I don't actually think that's super helpful or important. Is it important to tell the whole story or to stop at the climax? The film producer, the agent, the actor, the director, whoever it is that you're going to be pitching your project to, they're not the audience. They're your partner in the project. You don't need to withhold the ending from them. In fact, you can build up the ending and then give them the surprise ending and deliver it as a punch, as a wow, as a reveal. And that alone could have them go, wow, whoa, okay, yes, let's talk, right? If you give them the little cliffhanger, just wait. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you holding that back from me? So I believe very much that you don't just stop at the climax. You actually pitch the whole story if you're in a pitch meeting. But always keep in mind also the pitch meeting, a lot like the logline I talked about a little bit earlier, is the pitch meeting is something to capture their imagination, to pull them in, to give them sort of big picture stuff. What you're going to want to try to do, and this is a skill that needs to be developed over time. You can't just do this right off the top of your head. You will be able to, but most writers need to take some time to develop the skill. What you're always going to want to do is, with each piece of the puzzle, you're going to want to exceed their expectations. So you're going to need to get really good at understanding when you pitch something, when you say something, when you present some piece of the puzzle, to understand how they will see and interpret that piece of the puzzle, because it's their interpretation of it that you're building upon and that you're feeding on and that you want to twist and surprise and take them through that emotional roller coaster. Because most writers don't quite understand that. Most writers think, I have the story, here's my story, what do you think? And that's what the pitch is, or that's what the logline is, or that's what the synopsis is, or whatever. And it's like, no, that's not what this is about. This is about, you are alleging that as a writer, you are capable of entertaining me, of telling me a great story. If you can do that, or you're alleging you can do that, show me. Don't tell me you can do that. Do that. So your pitch should be entertaining. Your synopsis should be entertaining. It should be a story. When I read a one-page synopsis, I should have been taken through a story. I should have enjoyed that short one-page story, right? It shouldn't be something that I have to struggle to get through. It shouldn't be something that I question if I understood it correctly, or what's the point here, or, okay, that was a lot of detail, but, and every piece of the puzzle has to be that. And that's what makes this a challenging craft, because developing those skills doesn't come through learning how to master the pitch. It doesn't come through learning how to write a great logline. It comes through the skill of becoming a great screenwriter, of learning how to develop a compelling story, of writing that story, of learning how to rewrite that story and polish that story into a page turner. That's the whole reason I do what I do, because all of this, the whole thing, is necessary to do the pitch well, or to do the log line well, or to find and connect with your ideal producer effectively. There's a reason in fast screenplay you don't get the selling part of it, the promise progression and finding and connecting with your producer and all that stuff. You don't get that till the very end. You don't even see it until you've gone through the process, because you need these skills to be able to do that part of it. So this is part of the thing that writers don't know they don't know. They don't know that they don't know all the skills that they need to know in order to know how to do the other thing. Does that make sense? Maybe not, but hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so Sianka says, hi, glad to see you again. I want to start watching a movie and also read the script, but I'm a little confused. Should I read all and after watch, or read a scene and after watch, or watch and after read? Okay, so I think there's value in doing all these things. So one of the things you can do is you can look at, let's say, screenplays. The screenplays that I would always generally recommend, first of all, you want to make sure you read screenplays and not transcripts. A lot of what's on the internet, a lot of it is transcripts where people have watched a movie and they've gone through and they've written down what happens in that movie from the movie, right? Like they're not the writer. They put the writer's name on the front of it, but they're not the writer. They've gone through and they've transcribed that movie. And that's a very different thing than someone who writes a screenplay and then that screenplay gets turned into a movie. Because almost always, almost every single time, if you read an actual screenplay, it will differ from the final project, almost always, because there will be certain things that they couldn't shoot, or they shot it a little bit differently or something. And that's one of the telltale signs of those transcripts, is they are exactly what you see in the movie. So what you can do, ideally what you want to do is find the scripts, find the screenplays that you can, you look for early drafts of screenplays, you look for the kind of thing that you would be writing. Read those screenplays first, have a sense of how you think the visual would play out, and then go watch the movie and see what's different about it. To understand how to write a scene, I do not believe this is the way to do it, though. I believe this exercise will be beneficial and helpful to seeing how movies get translated, how screenplays get translated into movies. This is one of the grand things that one of the, John's question earlier, where did I get, lend me some energy, where I get my energy from is I want to build an indie film studio. Why? Because one of the biggest things writers don't have, I didn't have it when I was trying to write, you don't have it right now, is a way to see your screenplays get turned into movies. That difference, that gap, writing something, getting it from idea onto the page in such a riveting way that someone will go, wow, I want to make this, is one thing. That's a whole bunch of skills required to get to that point, right? But understanding how that then will be translated into an actual film, that's a skill set you can't see that. You'll never have that experience until a film you write gets turned into a movie. So I want to build the mechanism to do that. I want to build the film studio that gives writers that experience so that they can learn that skill set that is impossible to get any other way. If you read scripts or scenes and then see how someone translated that into it, or if you watch a thing and then you go back and you look at what was the original idea for this, I think there's value in that. That's possibly the closest you're going to get to this type of skill set that I'm talking about. But it will never be firsthand. It will never be you taking an idea through the process, turning it into something extraordinary, writing it down, making it work as a story, as a screenplay, making it affect a reader, making it transform them and help them see the cinema experience. All of that. That is a whole thing. Now, then watching some other people, director, producer, cinematographer, director, art director, actors, prop people, wardrobe, visual effects, all those people are going to take that picture you have crystal clear from months, maybe years of work on this project. They're going to take that and they're going to inject their own creativity and turn it into the movie, which is the only thing the audience will ever see. They're not going to see your script. They're going to see this. And so if you can get good at knowing how, well, when I write these things, it puts these pictures in people's heads and they turn it into this kind of a thing, or this kind of a filmmaker would turn these images into this kind of a thing. This kind of a filmmaker would turn this same image into this kind of a thing. Like if you, to be able to intuit that stuff, to understand that stuff and be able to not just understand it, but do it, that's a skill set that will change all future projects, because you will take that knowledge and that insight and that skill and inject it into the creativity of future projects. And this is where professional screenwriting comes from. This is what professionals can do. Any screenwriter who's been writing screenplays and working with filmmakers and directors and producers at a high level, particularly if those projects then go and get made, because a lot of people are making a lot of money writing screenplays that, for a variety of reasons, often through no fault of their own, don't go into production, don't get made, because a lot of money is spent in development that ultimately doesn't go anywhere. It's not necessarily anybody's fault, but that's just, there's a lot of things to juggle, right? But the ones that do have that experience of seeing their work, if they're connected to the process in that way and understanding kind of the dynamics behind it all, which are that you're creating something for another creative mind or a group of creative people to turn into another creative product, the movie. It will change the way you write. It will change the way you approach your craft, and it will change the way those neural pathways form and lead to your own unique intuitive creativity. So hopefully that makes sense. Or I didn't just go off on a little bit of a tangent, but hopefully that answers your question. I think it's a nice exercise. I don't think it's going to teach you, or it's not going to instill in you the skills that you might think it would instill in you. But it's certainly a worthwhile exercise, and by all means, yeah, for sure, go for it. Okay, let's see. Debbie, I'll just give you a shout out here. FYI, I have a screenwriters sidebar page on Facebook. Would love to hear from folks. I'm not sure what that means, but we'll go ahead and give it a little shout out there. Let's see. Roland says, hey, Jeff, how do you make sure you give your characters equal screen time in your script if you have more than one main character in TV and film? Well, first of all, you don't have to give your characters equal screen time. It really is based upon what your story is. If you're talking about like a TV show and you have the conflicting, there's 3 stars on the show and they all want sort of equal screen time. And so as a writer, you're trying to write narratives and stories that are going to feature each of those characters. Or if you're talking about that kind of a thing, I would just say, as you're looking at your story, if you're plotting it out or you're structuring it out, one of the things we do in the focus phase of the story development phase, we have this whole thing. It's a specific step, and it's all about sort of seeing, I call it track the symphony. And it's basically like you're looking at each of the strands of your story and all the sort of elements of your story. And you're seeing where throughout your screenplay, well, at that point, it's your story, where throughout your story those things happen. So, for example, you might, if you're tracking a specific character, maybe they appear on page 1 and then they don't appear again until like a whole bunch at the end. And then you go, oh, geez, there's this huge gap in here where we don't even see that character. Do we need to see that character? We probably do, so that we don't forget who they are and they don't just appear out of nowhere at the end. Well, let's pop them in a couple other scenes. If you have something like, we do it for there's like 33 elements that we're tracking in that particular exercise. So it's like, let's say you've got tension, or let's say a symbol. You have a certain symbol that you're using in your story, like dripping water or something like that. And it's symbolic for, I don't know, the life force leaking away, or I don't know. So you have like, you'll notice as you go through, you track where that happens in your story. Maybe you have it early on when you first had that idea for that symbol, but then as you were writing your script, you sort of forgot about it, and then it's not there. And because you've tracked it, you notice it early on, and then you notice it's not there anymore. So, okay, how can I reincorporate that into my story later on? Well, let's put it over here. Let's put a couple points here. Let's maybe include a big, like, leaky pipe or something to symbolize things getting out of control in the scene over here. Maybe it's a background element, whatever, right? So in much the same way, I would say you would do that with your characters. So you would figure out how and when they're presented through the story. Are they the central character, or are they a secondary character in whatever scene it is? How much screen time do they get? How many lines of dialogue do they get? Whatever. You can plot that out on a graph if you are so inclined. Generally, that's a bit of a mathematical approach to it. We do it in Fast, not because I think you will always want to use it, but because I want to take you through that process so that you can see it and appreciate it. On future projects, once you've gone through Fast, you may or may not ever do that exercise again. I'm not necessarily suggesting people should handle any of this in a mathematical or logical way, but to help you see it and help you get a feel for it. A lot of times, in order to do something intuitively, we need to do it mechanically first. By doing it mechanically first, we feel the movements of that thing. And then, okay, we feel the movements of that thing. Okay, then we feel the movements of it. And then at a certain point, it just becomes, right, it's going to be this. And then I can start playing with, nuances of it. So it becomes intuitive because we've done it mechanically. So if you're trying to do something like that for giving them equal screen time, I would definitely say sort of flesh it out mechanically first, and then but as you do, try to focus on how can I make doing this activity intuitive in the future. And in that way, you'll just start to develop a kind of a knack for how to give everybody equal screen time. Or you'll just, as you're writing, you'll just have that sort of sixth sense of, okay, so-and-so is not in this scene enough, or we haven't seen so-and-so in a while, so let's cut to a scene with them, or that kind of thing. I hope that's the question you're asking. If not, still an interesting topic of discussion for everyone else. Let's see. Okay. Let's see, talking amongst themselves, I think. Hello, hey, how's it going? Good stuff. All right, I'm scrolling down. About right, let's see. Sianka has another question about writing a pilot, the teaser scene. Should I write it first or finishing the script, read it, and choose the best scene that shows what they should expect from the TV series? So it goes two in a row there. I can't put them both up on the screen at the same time. But what you're talking about is the pilot teaser scene in a pilot. There's no right or wrong answer. Here's the thing about writing, and this goes for everybody. What you write, no one will ever know. I should say, no one will ever know. If you spent 10 years working on something, if you wrote everything completely backwards, like you wrote the last sentence first and then the sentence before that, as long as when we read it, it flows, we don't know, or we don't care. So if it works best for you to find a teaser scene after having written a pilot episode or a whole episode, or even for a movie, if you're going to do like a teaser scene before a Mission Impossible style opening action sequence or something, which you generally won't include in your script. However, whether you write it after the fact, there's no right or wrong way to do that. That's entirely up to you. So, hopefully that makes sense. As far as what they should expect from the show and how do you structure it, at the end of the day, if you're writing a pilot script, the pilot is assumed to be the template for all episodes of the show. So if you write with a teaser and then you have your story and you have a little tag at the end, after credits kind of tag, teasing the next episode, or just something that's a joke regarding the episode we just watched, or anything like that. However you set up your template is assumed to be what the show would be. But if you get into it and if it's a TV show and the network or whomever it is doesn't like that style, but they like your story or your concept, they're going to change that stuff anyway. So I wouldn't necessarily worry too much about it. So, okay. Tobias says, I have got to a point where I won't write anything until I can see much of the movie in my head. I walk around the garden playing all the characters before I write. Okay. That's fair enough. But I would say that one of the things you've got to understand, though, about movie writing specifically is there are a lot of moving parts. It's a complex form of writing. I know that when you look at the scripts, there's very few words on the page. It looks super easy. I get it. And if you get some script formatting software and you blast something out, it's super easy to blast something out that looks like a script. But there are so many hidden and implied elements moving back and forth. There's so many connections and interconnections that if you try to keep it all in your head, or you try to not do anything until you have it in your head, it's easy to either lose ideas along the way, or more likely, more often, keep spinning around singular ideas. I know you're not new here, but I know there are probably other people new to watching this, maybe. I had this whole thing in the TED Talk about ideas spark ideas. It's the way the human brain works. Ideas are there not to just fill our head. They're there to spark a new idea or action. It's what they exist for. So if you don't let them spark the next idea, all you're going to do is keep spinning over that idea. It may feel like you're getting it more and more refined as you keep circling over it in your brain. But what you're really doing is just stretching how long it's going to take to actually implement that idea. Because as soon as you take it from here and put it on the page, as soon as you do that, you are going to see problems with that idea. You're going to see how incomplete that idea is. You're going to see opportunities with that idea and other directions or new opportunities for new ways to possibly take that idea. So the longer you spin around with it in your head, I know it feels good. I know it because in your brain, whenever if you have an idea and you have, let's say you've got a story starts here, there's this cool scene and this cool scene, and then it's going to end like this. And your brain goes, I don't know what's going to go in the middle there, but something brilliant is going to go in the middle there. As soon as you put it on the page, that something brilliant is not there, and you can see it for what it really is. Our brains fool us into thinking we have a more complete picture than we actually have, because that's the way the brain works. The brain always fills in the blanks. When you think about your day that just went by, or you think about whatever politics you believe in, or you think about your family history or any of this kind of stuff, you don't have all the little details in between. You have a general sense because you've taken 3 or 4 ideas and you piece them together into a narrative in your own mind. It's the missing pieces of that, which are fine in the brain, but on the page, they don't fly. That's not going to work. People are not going to see what you saw in the idea because the pieces are missing. So the sooner you can get it out of your head and onto the page so that you can see what's missing, the sooner you can get to work to filling in those ideas. As you walk around the garden, as you kick around ideas and whatever, you will still be able to fill that. Your brain then, once it's out of you and you see what those gaps are, as you're moseying around the garden, your brain will start to feed you ideas for the gaps and the holes. And that's how you fill out your story and make it more solid. So all well and good, not telling you what to do or what not to do, just letting you know that that's a much longer way to get where you may be trying to go. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Okay, they're talking about apps and Blackberries. Oh, I haven't seen that word for a while. Jeff, is it possible that having other applications running on the machine capturing the video can cause resource exhaustion and pauses? Are you talking about my technical issues? I don't think so, because I have nothing else running. I run literally on this. It's a brand new computer. I got it for the live streaming stuff. There's nothing on it, so I don't have any reason. I have no idea why it would stick or get or spin around in circles. Or are we still seeing the like moments where I was noticing this earlier, and it was just, I got so frustrated because I don't have time to fix this problem. But it's possible, Joe, but I can't see how it would be possible because the CPU's not using any resources or anything. So Tobias says, I will also not write anything sci-fi until I have fully researched the science behind the concept. I'm assuming I must write science fiction that is as real as possible. That's fair enough. Fair enough. I do think so. Implicit in this and the previous one, Tobias, are a notion that I see in writers all the time, which is almost like you're taking the word writing to mean committing words to the page, and committing words to the page that's not what writing is. That's called typing. And so I say that as a joke, not as a I felt like it may have come across sarcastically, but it's my way of calling attention to my joke. Putting words on the page is not what writing is. Writing is the whole process. And if I can teach everyone watching this, how many people are here with us today? 14 people here right now. Is that right? Okay. Or no, 25 people here. I can't tell. Oh my God. I don't even understand what the metrics are. 26 people. What is the show for you guys? Anyway, if I could get nothing, if nothing else to get across to the 24 or 14 people who are watching right now, it is this: writing is a process. It is a process of discovery. It is not about getting words onto a page. If it was just about getting words onto a page, then as soon as you got words onto the page, you'd be done. But it's not about that. It's about the whole point of writing is that when someone reads the writing, they need to see in their mind what you saw in your mind when you put it onto the page. Now, when you first put it onto the page, it might be nowhere near that. And 9 times, probably 10 times out of 10, it will not be what you wanted it to be when you first get those words on the page. That's why we have to treat it like a process. We got to think about, we got to prepare, we got to focus our ideas into this is what I think I want my story to be. Get that onto the page as quickly as possible. And then look at what's there. Is this what I want it to be? No. And what did I want it to be? And okay, so how do I get it? What needs to change? What needs to be improved? What needs to be stripped away? What needs to be added to? What needs to be rethought? All that stuff. That's all part of the process. So I'm feeling like implicit in what the comments are that your sense of writing is about having it be right or perfect or good or ready or whatever before you commit it to the page. And if nothing else, this is the thing I would want to strip you of. I would want to take that idea and push it out of your brain forever, because the sooner you can understand and appreciate that this is a process, and getting the half-baked garbage onto the page is vital. It's essential. It's the only way you're going to get to that next step of figuring out how to make it perfect, because it cannot come out perfect. It's too much to hold in your brain at once. So we have to put it on the page imperfect and then improve it until it's perfect. It's the fastest, quickest, most effective, most powerful way to do it. So I understand the urge to make sure that your science is solid. That's great. I'm all for that. But let it be imperfect first. See what's imperfect about it. Sometimes you won't even know what's imperfect about it until you see it. Sometimes you won't know what's imperfect about it until someone reads it and give you feedback on it. So don't worry about that feedback. You want that feedback to tell you, is it working or is it not? And then double it back and apply it, and then use that to do more research on it. I know you're just starting fast, but one of the things in fast research is an integral part of the process throughout the process. It's not, we have a step for it early on in the focus phase, and then it seems like we don't do too much more with it. And then in the strengthen phase, we're researching all the time. And we're researching all the time because we want to strengthen the work. We want to improve it. We want to turn it from what it is, which was that hunch of an idea, that sort of creative flow, into something that actually works on all the different levels. And there are hundreds of different levels to make it all work. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, Hunter says, Jeff, have you ever been intrigued by a logline, but the screenplay turned out to be awful? Yes, every single screenplay that I have. No, that's not true. 90, okay, probably 90% of the screenplays that I've read. Yeah, no, that's not even true, because I would say most of the screenplays that I read were not actually strong enough for me to request the synopsis in the logline, but I did because I thought maybe there's something here. At various points along the way, I was wanting to, is this somebody that maybe I could work with? They put in the enthusiasm and passion. Yeah, I would say most of the time. And here's the thing. You got to understand, somebody like me, I'm a creative person. I've got lots of ideas for movies of my own. I have a big vision that I want to build. I've been creative all my life. I've been writing since I was 12. I started acting when I was 12. I've been in the film industry for all those years. I teach people creativity. I've worked with actors it's just, that's a part of who I am and how my brain works. So when you send me a logline, my creativity goes places, right? So exceeding my imagination is, I don't know that I'm sure plenty of people can do it, but plenty of people cannot. And so it needs to be that much stronger for me to go, bang, that's the one. We were doing a test version of the writer's room where I had invited some people who hadn't been all the way through fast yet into the group. And just because I love these people and I care about these people and I want to see them succeed. And I wanted to build this thing, and we weren't ready for it, but I wanted to try testing it all out. And some of the ideas that came in were like, fantastic. And it was like, that is not a project that I would make first or with the limited resources that I have now, but I love that idea. And then sometimes it would be like, okay, and what about this? And try to then build on it and grow it. But to then take that log line that is like, wow, this is fantastic. Now that script has to be a level above. That's a tricky one. That's a lot. It's challenging. That's the goal. That's what I'm looking for every single time. That's what I understand is the way you're going to succeed, is to have a log line that is beyond dazzling. Look, here's the big challenge. If you get really good at writing a log line or hooking me with a log line, that doesn't automatically mean that you have the skill of taking me on an emotional roller coaster and through a journey in your 120 page screenplay for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like, just because you can write a compelling log line and maybe even a compelling synopsis does not mean that you're going to hold my interest, pull me through the ups and downs, keep me, like, right when I start to get bored, pull me right back into it. Like, all that stuff that's skill that takes time to be able to learn how to do that well and practice to be able to do that well. And so, yeah, it's not as common as you might think. It's certainly not as common as you would hope. So yes, that happens a lot. Let's see. Let me have a quick drink while I keep reading. Dimitri, hello. I'm glitching again. Oh, when was that? Am I glitching now? It doesn't look to me like I'm glitching now. So I read I read the comments after so much time has passed that who knows when that was. I'll have to I'll never have time to rewatch this, but if I can, I'd love if anyone rewatches this, or if you can like take a note of the time code of when the glitchy things happen, and then send that to me. That'd be great, just because I need to see this stuff and figure out what's going on. Okay, let's see. Keep tightening. Okay, Boston Joe, does having a couple of novice backers who could maybe fund 40% of the production cost help attract a lead producer, or does it complicate things? So you're talking about the business of making the movie, I'm assuming. Just having a couple of novice backers. So in other words, investors who don't know who've never invested in film before, I'm assuming is what you're talking about, who could fund 40% of the production cost. Does that help attract? So in other words, so just using me as a hypothetical, if you came to me with a project, presumably, that's the reason you're doing it, right? And you've got some backers that have 40% of the budget, would that attract me or someone like me to want to put in the other 60% to go make the thing? It really depends on the project, to be perfectly honest. It could complicate things, but one of the grand challenges producers always have is money, and finding the money for the production and finding investors. And there's money out there to be had to make films with, and not just from novices who have never done it before and don't yet realize they're probably going to lose their investment. But also, there are a lot of people out there. So, but one of the challenges is finding that combination. You got to understand, it's not just about the money, because, we could go out and make a project tomorrow that's not, the script is not ready, but we have the money for it. But that doesn't really do us any good if the script isn't really ready, because then you're probably not going to be able to hook and attract the market that would be interested in that project. And so then you're probably not going to be able to recoup anything if it's not quite ready, or it's not deep enough, or it doesn't resonate enough, it doesn't have strong enough themes or whatever to attract the interest of a film festival or something like that. Well, then, it's not going to make any waves on that regard. So, I know a lot of people over a lot of years who put a lot of money into films that never saw the light of day anywhere. I mean, there has been, I wouldn't even hazard a guess. If I just had to estimate, I would estimate billions of dollars have been spent on films that have never seen the light of day throughout the decades. I mean, if it was me, I'm only going to make a film that I want to make. I'm not going to make a film just because somebody brings me money. I'm not going to just make a film because, somebody's written a script and somebody else liked it, or it's a story I should like, or whatever. I tried to make a little indie film with a friend of mine many years ago. We spent 7 years on a project that we ultimately had to abandon. That changes how you think about these things. That scarred me. That took me years to get past that. I don't even know if I am past that yet, because it's made me gun shy. I've wanted to make sure that the first project we make is something extraordinary and doesn't run into those same kinds of complications. And it may be one of the reasons why I was as hard and picky and finicky with the writers' room group, and not wanting to jump into something a little bit more quickly. But I would probably imagine that most producers who have any degree of experience are in the same boat, because we've all spent a lot of time and energy on wasted projects or projects that went nowhere. And so, yeah, there's no definite answer to that. I think it's going to depend on the specific situations of the project and the people involved and the investors and all that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, money and the project need to be in alignment as well. They need to be, it all needs to be in service of something that the producer is going to be able to not just make, but they see that they could market, or they have some idea of where they would go with the project once it's done. Because we're not just making a movie just to make a movie. Generally, we're making a movie because We want to take it to the festivals and maybe get some prestige out of it for our filmography, or we're making it to make just enough money back to prove to investors for a bigger project that we can make our money on a movie, or maybe we're making this because we think we'll make a ton of money out of this project, or we're making it because we're getting paid to make something that's more or less a showreel piece for an actor, or what have you. There's a million reasons why people might be doing those things. So hopefully that helps make sense. Let's see. I love this comment, but I'm not sure what it's regarding. It's amazing how much can be eliminated and rewritten after a year of being complete. So if you're talking about an old script, I didn't quite see where that came from. I couldn't follow this thread because I wasn't in the moment with it. Yeah. So one of the things we do in Fast is after you finish writing your first draft, the end of the apply phase and the beginning of the strengthen phase, I say you take a week off at a minimum. If you can take a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months off, that would be a better way to do it. So that when you begin the strengthen phase, the rewrite part of the process, you see your script with as fresh of eyes as possible. Because when you're in something, your perspective, your perception of it is necessarily distorted because you're in the middle of it. To be able to see it, to be able to step back and see it objectively within the context of everything else that's happening in the world, within the context of everything else that's happening in the film industry, just your own creative sensibilities, you need that objectivity as much as possible. So before you do any rewrites, before you change anything, you're going to want to take a little bit of a break from it. Now, I know people want to keep going and they want to learn the process, so we say just take a week at least. But it's a great time to go back and start a new project, and then when that one's gone through the process, then you start on the rewrite of the first one, and then in that way you're double developing those skills, and you're moving forward with a new project with objectivity. So most writers don't like to do that because it's going to take longer, even though it gets you there much faster. That's the grand challenge that I have with what I teach and how I teach it. It feels like it's going to take you longer to get there, but it's absolutely the fastest way to get there. Oh, well, writers don't believe me. What can I do? Okay, so let's see. I get a lot of pushback from proscript readers with scripts that are 120 pages to try to get them to 110 or less. Generally, my rule of thumb is always 105. I think 105 is the safest bet. That's what I generally recommend for if you're submitting something on spec. It's a different story if you know you're going to be producing it, or if you're specifically targeting, let's say, private investors who aren't as caught up in sort of industry norms. One of the reasons people are not so big on the 120-page screenplays anymore is because that's a 2-hour movie, and usually a spec script. If a spec script is written to the 3-act structure, which is what the studios tend to expect, that's just the window that they tend to look at everything through. 120 pages is often a bit long. Most writers who are writing a tight writing style, you can probably fit more onto your pages than more action, more dialogue, more things happening. Not squeezing things on, but like just creating stories that are more nuanced and have more layers to them. That's that intangible stuff that a new writer looking at a script going, this is going to be easy, that they'll never see. Things that are implied, things that are a couple of words over here paint a picture that's much bigger than just what's here. If you can write in that kind of writing style and that kind of, you can hit those marks, you're probably not going to get to 120 pages on a spec screenplay. And so it generally, I know from being a reader on this stuff, I read, like I said, some 7,000 or so screenplays that came into my production company. And when you read enough, you start to see where people are bloated. You start to see where you're writing the scene, it's not necessary, even though you think that it is. And even though it's not anywhere else in the story, it's still unnecessary because certain things are implied here. Just that kind of stuff. You end up generally not needing the 120 pages almost always. So screenplay is never complete. It's just the best it can be at any given moment. That's a quote from somewhere. I can't remember who said that. Yeah, I don't know. I think you can complete a screenplay, but any screenplay can be changed. The question is, does it achieve what it's trying to achieve in a complete way? That's, I think, how you determine whether or not something is complete or not. Thanks for your answer, Jeff, from John. Thanks, John. Yeah, I'll get better putting aside for a long time. I thought, okay, how similar do you think writing a screenplay is to writing a novel from your perspective? We get this question almost every week. High Fallen Productions. They're two very different media. Writing a screenplay is, I may as well repeat this because it's always good for people to hear, even if you've heard this before. Writing a novel is the end user experience. The reader is the one who is going to directly interact with your words, and those words are going to steer the experience that they're having in their imagination. That imagination will take them through all 5 of their physical senses. Generally, you're going to want to include descriptive smells or sounds, or maybe memories that a character's having. You can take characters to places and in ways that we can't go in a movie because it's happening in the imagination of the reader. That's the art form of the novel. That's the art form of that kind of prose. The screenplay is a different kind of art form. A completely different kind of art form. The screenplay is cinema on the page. The screenplay is when someone is sitting in a theater watching the pictures and the sound that's coming from the screen, not the music, but the sound, just the picture of what's happening. And it's as if you're describing what's happening on the stage to someone so that they can see that picture in their mind. The screenplay exists to tickle the imagination of the people who are going to then create the film. So the screenplay is never going to be read by the end consumer. The end consumer is going to watch the movie. The movie is not written by the writer. It's not purely the writer's creative expression. It is the writer's creative expression combined with the directors and the cinematographers and the art director and the wardrobe person and the actors and the music and the whole collaborative process. The film is the art form that the audience is going to experience from a movie, right? The movie, the TV show is the thing they connect with. A novel, it's the words of the author. So that happens in their own imagination. They're seeing from a novel, they're seeing in their mind what the main character looks like. And 3 people are going to see 3 different people, right? Everybody's going to see somebody slightly different because it's going to be based on their own imagination. In a film, we're watching the visual story of what's happening on the page. As the writer, you're writing for this medium. It's not about writing for that end user's immersive sensory experience. It's about writing for the filmmaking team's sensory experience and the movie impact on the end user. So you need to be thinking about how is the end user, how is the person watching the movie or watching the TV show, how are they going to experience this visual story? That's what we're trying to include on the page. And so trying to get to that they're 2 very different things. So there's a whole different language for writing screenplays as to writing novels. It's a whole different reader experience, and ultimately it's a whole different end user experience as well. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so let's see what else we got. By the way, welcome, Fallen Productions. Appreciate you stopping by. If you have any other questions, feel free to let me know. Let's see. Oh, Debbie says, good question. It would be great to have some benchmarks to determine progress, which is what I was talking to Debbie about way back when. And that's how we know how far behind I am on the chat. Wesley Howard says, hi there. Where are you located, or where do you want to build your production? So I started all of this in Sydney, Australia. I'm from Los Angeles. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, started as a young actor, worked in the film industry in LA for 15 years before deciding to move to Australia. I spent half of my time in Australia, half my time in New Zealand, over a span of about 15 years. While I was there, I tried to make a little indie film with a friend of mine. As we thought we were nearing completion, I started looking for screenplays that I could take with me with the film to the film markets in Cannes or in Los Angeles and say, hey, here's our little low budget film, which is great for low budget, right? Yes. Now, are you interested enough in what we can do to produce this or this or this? And when I started looking for those scripts, I couldn't find anything. And I looked all around Australia. So I got 300 submissions in. I read all of those 300 submissions. They were all just absolutely unusable. So I started teaching people how to write screenplays that an indie producer like me could theoretically say yes to and produce. That led me to creating a first draft workshop, 8 weeks from idea to first draft in 8 weeks. And I got like 2 weeks in and realized people here don't even know the basics of this stuff. So I put together a 12-hour weekend workshop, everything you need to know before you start writing your screenplay. And then the idea was at the end of that, we would all go into the 8-week first draft workshop. I started running that weekend workshop, and for the next 5 years, I just kept running it. And I ran it all around Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Malaysia, US, Canada. I ran it all over the place about 80 times over about a 5-year span to like 1,200 writers, little 15-person workshops, very interactive. We're all in the same room. I would give people feedback, all that kind of stuff. Couldn't find anybody. People loved the weekend workshop, but they didn't want to go on. They didn't ever like pursue it. They didn't follow through. I think in Australia, you can't really, there isn't this sense of how possible this all is. I'm hoping to try to change all that with what I'm trying to do here. But while in Australia, I burned out on that. So I started a film festival. I created an educational resource that won like a top award in Australia. I wrote a book. I wrote another book for Apple. I did all sorts of stuff. I directed some TV in New Zealand and a stage play in Australia and just all kinds of stuff. And then at some point just realized that this isn't changing. This problem isn't changing. And so what I wanted to do was create a home study DVD course that would take a writer through the entire process and actually not just create a screenplay, but create a screenplay a producer like me could actually say yes to. And creating a DVD home study course was going to cost me about $300,000. I didn't have the money and I did not think the market was big enough. So I just went, nope. Cut to a couple years later and the internet had grown and changed. And I said, I could probably do this as an online thing. And then if things change over time, I can change that. And so that's when I built Fast Screenplay. And that's when I started teaching all the screenwriting stuff. In the interim, now, cut to 10 years later, I came home. I stayed in Los Angeles for some time. I met and fell in love with my now wife and had a kid. And so now I'm back in Los Angeles. Moving in the process, actually right now, of moving the business from Australia to back to Los Angeles. So the question is, where am I located? The long-winded answer is sort of Australia, sort of New Zealand, sort of Los Angeles, but predominantly Los Angeles now, finally. And again, where do I want to build my production? This is the wrong question. You're new, so it's not, I don't mean anything by that. The question is, where do I want to build it? It's not about building a production somewhere. I want to build an indie film studio. When I say those words, people imagine that I'm looking to build like a sound stage and stuff and make things. What I'm looking to build is an entity that makes films with producers and production companies worldwide. I have a very global perspective on this, having taught this stuff initially and primarily in Australia and New Zealand, starting all this stuff out, and understanding that in Australia and New Zealand, people just do not think screenwriting is a real thing. Nobody puts any time or effort into it because you can't really do this. You can't make money doing this for sure. There's no opportunity here. They all think oh, that's done in Hollywood. No, you absolutely can. You could probably have more success doing it in Australia or outside of Hollywood, because there are so many opportunities to take advantage of that people are not taking advantage of. They're not even thinking to go down that road because they're thinking it all has to happen in Hollywood. So this is my great challenge, is helping people understand the global opportunities with this. Add to that the fact that I like global perspectives. I like different cultures and understanding how they see the world. I'm a big believer that every single human being on the planet has a different window on our world. We each see the world in a vastly different way that's dictated by our DNA, by our life experiences, by our dreams, by our hopes and aspirations, what we think is possible within the context of the community and the culture that we grow up in. All of that changes. Every single person watching this, everyone who watches a replay of this, anyone who I've ever interacted with in my life sees things differently to how I see it. I want to be able to harness those stories, all those different stories, and tell those stories and share those stories in a collective sort of way. And that's kind of the independent film studio vision and model that I'm trying to build. So what I'm actually trying to build is a way to develop writers who can write material that we then connect with producers and production companies all around the world to sync up with who's aligned with what kind of project. We're going to start with lower budget projects. We're going to, as those make money, we're going to build into bigger budget projects until eventually we have the engine that's pumping out projects, and therefore giving writers this clear path of, oh, I want to be a professional writer. I can follow this path, and that will give them more incentive to do the hard work to get through the process. So the indie film studio isn't so much a place, isn't so much a building, as it's an entity through which we're going to make films all around the world. So where am I located kind of doesn't matter. And because I want to make films with writers and production teams all around the world. That's my goal. That's my vision. That's what I'm trying to build towards. We'll see if we ever get there, because who knows? Anyway, so thank you for your question, Wesley, and welcome. Ask any other questions or anything you want to know. Are you a filmmaker? Are you a writer? Where do you fit on the spectrum of all this? And where do you want to be a part of it somehow, some way, some why? Let me know. Okay, so let's see. Spacious interior. What about extras? How many is too many? Okay, so Tobias says, Jeff, spaceships, interior, exterior, space stations, planets, landscapes, weather effects, etc. can mostly be done on green screen for low cost. Oh, can most be done on green screen for low cost? Yes and no. Green screen is not the be all end all. It's not this magic technology that can let us shoot anywhere for nothing. Like, to do green screen well, keep in mind, if it's just an actor in front of a green screen backdrop, like, we've all seen Zoom backdrops these days. So people have a greater and greater sense of, like, that's a green screen backdrop. So we're really going to want the actor to interact with that environment to make it more realistic. So that becomes a little more complex. Motion graphics and motion tracking and interacting with the scene. Maybe one prop is real, but then it's connected to something CG. Or Blender is a 3D animation, CG animation program that's free. Anyone can get it and learn how to do it, and you can make amazing cinema quality stuff with it. But that doesn't mean that it's easy to do, or that, getting the people who know how to do it might not be cheap for us anyway. So, it's, yes, you can do stuff for low cost. That doesn't mean we can do stuff for low cost for whatever project you're pitching, right? So when it comes to, I think this is like a budget question, like how, now that the technology is what it is, can we actually expand our imagination and write more grandiose kind of things, because anything's possible with new technologies? And yes, in theory and principle, but to do that well is challenging. So anything that has big set extensions or big CG or lots of green screen where you're interacting with the environment, or stuff that's going to look realistic, I mean, a lot of that stuff is still very labor intensive, if not money intensive. To do it well still is money intensive, by the way. So when you're talking about extras, I mean, they have programs, CG programs that can create big background crowds like you would see in a Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones or something. And like, those are all CG characters that are like charging in the big battles. It's all doable. There's no how many is too many. There's no right or wrong. There's no yes or no. It's not something where I can give you like a bullet point handout list and say, include this, don't include that, include that. Everything is subjective. Everything is a balancing act. Everything is pliable and variable. So this is one of the great challenges that writers often maybe don't quite grasp, which is that it's not about can I or can't I do this? If you're writing for a low budget or a micro budget or something like that, you really need to understand who the filmmaker is going to be and what they can do and what their resources are or what they might have access to or who they can get on board as, you know, can I go out and get some great CG artist who sees my vision and sees my marketing plan and goes, I think this guy's onto something. I'll do it for 20% of the project. Like, can I get that? I don't know. Maybe I can. And in which case it's all doable. Right. So, I don't like to think for this reason. I don't like to think in terms of rules of yes, you should, or no, you shouldn't, or what have you. Cause it really depends. Generally speaking, you want to keep your locations, your resources, the complicated visual effects, all that stuff to a minimum on micro budget projects. Just the more bare bones it can be and still be a compelling story, still be something visually interesting, something that an audience will be able to engage in and not be removed from because of the budgetary limitations. You know, the more intimate you can make it, the greater chance it has with a wider variety and array of potential producers because of that. So hopefully that makes sense. Jeff, don't forget your drink. Thank you. I actually clicked that by accident. Did I promise that we would go over this week? I love that you could recognize in what I said earlier. Maybe some of the issues that we could have with that project. But anyway, it's all good. Let's see. Electrical practice was possible. There's no other way. Green screen or hyperbole. Blender engine. Okay, so Wesley's talking about the CG stuff and the low budget thing. So yeah, this is more or less kind of what I'm saying as well. But again, it all depends on who knows what and all that kind of thing. So, I see you guys were talking about this in the. Meg says, how come stuff I watch don't seem to have gone through these qualifiers? You see filmmakers having to explain their shows. Okay, so the question, this question is, I'm talking about like, so the thing to understand with a show like this or what I teach or my perspective or all this is, I want to build something specific, something grand, something challenging. I don't just want to make 100 films a year. I want to make 100 great films a year. And, I've been in this game for 35 something years. Like when I was in my teens, I was looking at just making films. And like, I could have done all that back then. That I was very specific in, I want to carve out a specific path of quality. I think I've told the story in the past to people, but I worked for like 6 months for Roger Corman's company, the King of the B films. In 5 months, I worked on 6 films or 6 films in 5 months or whatever it was. And these were these like ultra low budget projects, some slasher stuff, some like exploitative sci-fi, ridiculous sci-fi stuff. It was fantastic. I loved the experience. I loved the business model of the place. They were all genre movies, straight to video. The problem was that's not the kind of movie I wanted to make. I aspired to win Oscars or change the world with like these deeply life-changing movies that I grew up loving, like whatever. So I aspired to a different type of film than the type of film that is generally made at the low budget to try to, with shock value or whatever, win an audience. And so that's just always carried with me. And when I teach writing, I'm trying to teach writers to aspire to their highest. You don't have to be as good as I'm implying to be successful. The key to success is very simple. It's one word. The key to your success as a writer is literally one word. And that one word is alignment. Your project has to meet the immediate needs of at least one producer. If it does, you're going to get a yes. So if you're writing some schlocky horror film, exploitative blah, 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 that's hooking onto some, of the moment news cycle story, and you can catch that, somebody called them earlier a novice investor. I can't remember what, I think it was Joe. If you can attract the right person, and you're in sync and you can get them to see it, and the director goes, oh my God, I could totally make this. It would be fun. It would be funny. It would be silly. It would, who knows? I would be able to impress my girlfriend or whatever. Then that film can get made. That's not what I'm going to teach people how to do. I'm not going to teach you how to aspire to the lowest possible rung outcome. I want to aspire higher. I want to aim big. I want to make stories and movies that share people's windows on the world. I want to push us forward as a species and civilization, because I really believe that storytelling is who we are. It's what we do. It's how we think. It's how we understand the world. The only way I will ever understand another person's perspective is through understanding their story. It's how we vicariously see what we will never ourselves experience. That's the power of story. I want to do it at that level. And so I'm always going to suggest that kind of stuff. Your question is, if filmmakers don't do this, or they're telling stories that don't include all these details, they're probably winning over fans or attracting audiences through some other mechanism, through just the hook of the idea, or through maybe the star power of the celebrity who's in the lead role, or just the sheer marketing blitz of a campaign Netflix puts out to advertise their latest show, whatever, right? So there are 1,000 different ways that you can be successful, or that you can get noticed, or that your work that is not quite up to that standard can still be seen and appreciated and win you lots of fame and fortune. But I think to teach this stuff, to teach the process, to help people go through, I needed to create a system that would work for anyone, that would work for that schlock filmmaker, but that would also work for the person who's trying to get to the top of write studio tentpole blockbusters, but also somebody who would make movies in their backyard, but also somebody who would make sort of the mid-level indie films, but also somebody who would make an experimental avant-garde film. Like, not all of those people are going to follow the same story formula, right? Not all of those people are going to take the same approach to how they break into the industry, but they all have to follow the same process. We all have to take those ideas swirling around our head and focus them into the plan the story idea that we think we want to tell. We have to get that onto the page. We have to take that stuff and strengthen it and make it solid, make it what we want it to be, refine it so that when someone reads it, they get exactly what we had in our mind. So, and they can't put it down. It's riveting. It's even an experimental avant-garde film, if you're connected with the right kind of audience who would want to make that kind of thing, you want them to be able to pick up that script. Just go, I love this. I want to make this, right? To be able to then test that, to be able to then connect that with its ideal producer. That process is always going to be the same for everybody, whether it's top level, erudite, appealing to the highest possible, intellects of the world or whatever, or it's just lowbrow popcorn, just sit back and entertain me kind of fare, right? So we have to always understand that it's not about how does that get made when Jeff's talking about all these things it has to be. I'm talking about for something that all writers have to do and think about, whether you're at that level or at that level or at that level. Hopefully that makes sense. So hopefully that makes sense. And I don't know if you were actually Meg Ryan or if that was just a picture. I like Meg Ryan. Let's see. Okay, so Jeff, ensemble or one main character? Should you always have a villain of some kind or just a conflict environment? Anti-heroes don't arc. A lot of questions in there. Should the main character always have a wound is another question. Possibly moving off topic. So we'll talk about characters in a character episode at some point, but there is no right or wrong. Just as I talked about all these different kinds of stories, there are any number of different ways to tell a story. There are any number of different types of stories or story forms or character types, or every single one of these could work. Absolutely all of these could not work. It really depends on your ability to tell that story effectively. And that's what we learn and develop in the process. And that's what the craft is all about. So hopefully that makes sense. Sorry, I'll go deeper into it when we're talking about specific character stuff. Let's see. Let's see. Everything's in topic when Jeff's around. He'll get to you eventually. See? Right. But then you have to watch me reading all the chat. So for those of you who are new here, maybe you don't know, but I always have I always have an aversion to having you watch me read through this. So hopefully it's not. Okay. Yeah. 11, Dimitri. Let's see. Even though I'm short. Don't plan, be like, okay. Roland says, yeah, I'm just curious, is there a certain amount of time to spend on each character in a TV show? Going back to the question that we had talked about a little bit earlier, or do you just let the story flow for the characters? In a TV show, look, the answer to this question is specific to the story. So there's no right or wrong, but the way to know how much time to spend on a character in a TV show is you have to look at the arc of the show and understand where the characters come in, how important they are to the larger arc. So let's say, for example, you have a season of a show or 5 seasons of a show that take a character from here to here. Well, that transformation of that character, if you have a character starting out in the early parts of the story, but then they're not going to really sort of come back until later on and become this major influence. It's got to be some reason why they're not there in that middle part, right? So if you know that your character is going to be influential later on in the story, you may want to inject them into different parts of the story or different scenes along the way, even though they're not necessarily necessary. I mean, you still want to make sure that they're integral to the scene. You got to find a way to make them something that you can't just extract, because you don't want filler in there. But if you know that the story arc is this, and you don't want to have a character starting out here, a supporting character, and then, just pop in over here, they're gone for 3 or 4 episodes, because then we're going to be like, well, what happened in that time? And all of these kinds of things are the questions that you need to ask. There's no answer to your question specifically. There's no here's the definitive answer to your question. It all depends on the story that you're telling, on the characters that you have in your story, and what you're trying to accomplish with the story. What is the story trying to say, and why? So what I'd like to ask you, and it may take a minute to get to your answer because we can see how far behind I am on the chat. What I want to know from you is, why do you want to know these kinds of things? What is it about how much time you spend with each character? Why is that a question that's in your mind? Is there some challenge or problem that you're having with, you're getting notes that characters disappear, or you're worried that you have to give everyone equal screen time? What is the worry, I guess? And then I'll try to remember that when we get to it, if you answer on the thing. Okay, so let's see. Okay, we're talking about Disney, and Remo. Hi, Remo. Some people, not sure what some of these comments are. People talking to each other, which is all good. I welcome the community. Absolutely. At some point, I think it was Debbie that asked if I needed a moderator. I don't need a moderator necessarily, but maybe that would speed things up. What do you guys think? You guys let me know. The other question that I have for you guys, now that we're almost 2 hours into this thing, we'll probably go for another 45 minutes to an hour if you want. The other question that I have is, one thing I notice on this channel is that people don't really watch a 3-hour replay of a live stream, even though you guys who are here can see that, you know, hopefully we move quickly from topic to topic, and hopefully I keep your interest through the whole thing. But looking at a 3-hour time on a video and clicking play is probably not something many people are going to do. And so I'm always trying to figure out, how am I going to reach more writers and get you more immediately usable and expansive ideas, and give you the perspective that you actually need to do this and to conquer this and to succeed in all this. Would it be better for me to take the time and make shorter videos, little 5 to 8 minute videos that are, you know, about a specific topic or whatever, and quick cuts and cutaways and B-roll and all that stuff? Or do you like this big sort of extended 3-hour thing? My challenge is that I have like 2 days a week to do as much as I can do here. and that includes some time on one of the projects that I'm working on. So, what's the best use of that time? Do you find this to be helpful? I know that we can go into a lot of things that happen spontaneously, and I can go off on little tangents, and we get some really good stuff out of this. The problem is getting really good stuff out of this that a couple dozen people are going to see, and then no one else is ever going to watch it because it's in the middle of a 3-hour block of what, like, I don't know that that's going to ultimately be the best use of time for the larger strategy. I don't want to give this up because I'm also going to be using it to build the modules for essential screenwriting. But what would you guys prefer to see out of all this? How can we make this the most valuable to you, short-term and long-term? I know that you guys who are here each week are motivated by it and inspired by it. Hopefully, you know, obviously there's a lot of good stuff happening here. How can we get the most out of it? Because if it's just a sort of 3-hour chunk where we're all making each other feel good, but we're not actually, you know, moving forward as we need to, you know, I want to make sure to put the time into the right sort of place. So anyway, if you can pop it into the chat box, that'd be cool. Like another example, my feature script I'm working on has 2 main characters whose stories can be an individual movie with similar arcs and themes. So how do you make sure not to build one character more than the other? Well, so Roland, I'll put this up and then I'll go to the other one. So if you have 2 characters, why do you want to tell both of the stories? This is going to be the question. Like, how do you make sure not to build one character more than the other? They're probably not going to be of equal weight. If you're having 2 stories that are telling the same, that have the same arc, or they're learning the same thing, for example, you don't really need both of those characters. Like what you would be saying by telling your story with 2 parallel storylines of the same arc is something along the lines maybe of, this arc is universal, it happens all over the place, or what are the unique differences between the 2 arcs, or it would be about the fact that there are 2 and what's different or the same about them. That's what your meaning now becomes about, not about the arc anymore, right? If you have 2 and there's the same storyline. So, if it's about how do you make sure that you build them equally, because your message is that, well, then you're going to start to think about what that larger message or theme is going to be. And then you're going to design your story based on conveying that theme. So this is a very big topic, and it's hard to explain. Theme is something that a lot of writers think that you sit down and you come up with your theme and then you write your story to that theme. And that is possible, but you're probably going to have a very trite theme if that's what you're doing. What you'll probably want to do is start out with some sort of theme or driving idea, and then see where the story goes, and then figure out what theme is being told by your story, and then adjust your story so that it makes that point, so that it conveys that theme, so that everything is in sync with that theme. So if you don't know what your theme is, or if you do, maybe in this case, and so you know that you want these two parallel stories, you're going to have to figure out what it is that you're trying to say so that you can design it in such a way that you say that. That doesn't necessarily mean one can't have more screen time than the other. Generally speaking, you're going to have a central character. Even if it's an ensemble, there's usually one character who's kind of like the central character of the story. Not always, absolutely not always. But if it's a true ensemble where there's like 5 different main characters, well, then the story isn't about the character's journey. It's about the interaction between the journeys. And what you're saying, the theme that you're trying to get across, comes out of that idea, not out of the one or the other character's transformation, right? Because if you want it to be about one or the other character's transformations, zoom in on that character and let them be the central character, or some combination that is going to highlight that's the theme or the message. I hope this is making sense, because it's an important idea. But anyway, so how you do it is really going to depend on what your theme is or what your point is. And I don't know if you have this idea of twin narratives and you don't know why you're doing it that way, then knowing why you're doing it that way is what's going to help you answer the question that you have. I hope that makes sense. If not, follow up and we'll talk more about it. Okay, so let's see. Yep. Okay. Jeff, have you heard of Hideo Kojima? He makes some very unique sci-fi themed video games with plots you probably enjoy. I have not. I have not. I used to be a big gamer when I was young, but I'm back when it was like lo-fi gaming. But I have not for a fair while had the time to do too much of that. I have a little app on my phone that's kind of a time killer for just clear my brain space, but that's about all I ever have a chance to do. Let's see. Okay. Is a deep and meaningful movie more important than chasing the big money? I don't think so. I think I'm not a believer that it's art versus commerce. I believe it is art and commerce working together synergistically. So I think look, the bottom line is movies are expensive, whether it's just through time of, the time it takes a bunch of people to come together to do something for cheap or free, or whether it's actual money and it's the expense of making something at a big budget level. It's expensive to make a movie. So as a result, you really do need to think about the monetary side of things and how are you going to recoup that money? Otherwise, you're just not going to get a chance to make too many movies. If my goal is to build an indie film studio that makes multiple films a year, eventually, hopefully, ideally, at some point, years down the road, hundreds of films a year, enough of those have to make enough money to be able to sustain the whole thing and keep making those films. As soon as we start losing money on every project, well, guess what? We're not going to be there for very long, and which is one of the reasons to start low budget. I don't think one's more important than the other. I think you'll be driven by one more than the other, generally speaking. And because you're driven by one more than the other, it's probably going to steer and control some of your creative choices, and that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to write a movie or make a movie as a money grab per se. I don't think there's something to be said for just simple entertainment that's just silly and fun and takes your mind off of it. I don't think everything has to have a deep and meaningful point. And I don't think I don't just want to make movies that have deep and meaningful points. I want movies that are going to be entertaining, but that give us something. Anyway, it's hard to put into words. Jeff's going to drink a little bit again, guys. Okay. I'm skipping down a little bit. I'm not sure when you said you're being derivative, Debbie. I already that's a little bit back in the past. I can't remember what that was for. Matthew says hi. Okay. Here, I'll say hi. Just give you a quick little shout out since you're new to the channel. I think I don't recognize the name before, so hi. Oh, what if it's based on an IP? What's based on an IP? The project that you were writing? I'm not sure what that's referring to. I'm sorry, I'm not keeping up with the speed of the real-time chat. So I'm usually half an hour or more behind. So by the time we get there, I talked about 3 different things. So I always can't necessarily remember what it's about. What if it's based on IP? I'm assuming you're talking about whatever it is that you want to write, the story idea that you have in mind. You have to get rights to something that already exists. If you don't get rights to that thing, don't spend your time doing it, because you might not get the rights to that thing. And then you spend all that time writing something that can't be used. I'm a big believer in teach yourself, learn through my system, learn through wherever, learn how to write original content. It's going to be your own IP. It's going to develop your skills as a writer. Yes, it's true that on the bigger budget level, most of that stuff starts as IP somewhere else, a book, a play, news story, whatever, because some of those things already have a built-in audience. And, at the big budget level, they're very risk averse, as you can imagine. Spending $100 million, you want to make sure you're going to get $100 million plus your marketing budget, which is probably another $100 million back. So you need something for a wide enough audience. You want something people know about, so they go with existing IP. I'm generally on the lower budget level. That's usually not going to be the case. And just developing the skill of writing, of being an original creative thinker and storyteller. Focus on the original stuff, in my opinion. But anyway, if you have more specific question, then let me know, and we'll, I look like I'm over 6 feet tall on the red carpet. Which red carpet was that? Because I do recall a shot on a red carpet where I'm standing next to 2 famous dudes who are shorter than me. Anyway, you look tall by comparison. Anyway, let's see. Bleh, you skipped my comment. Hey, sweet idiot. I would never intentionally skip your comment. What's your comment? Let me know. It's not in my, it might be when I was glitching, but I've been reading I would have seen your name, I think. Maybe I skipped it, but I did not intend to. But ask again, and I will certainly address it. Let's see. I am skipping through some of stuff that looks to be conversation that's happening with each other. This has got to be some sort of inside joke. I don't know what. Is this why Jeff calls the channel fast? Not sure what that's referring to. Oh, because they were talking about vodka in the comments. So no, that's not why I call it fast, but whatever works for you. Well, there's some quote, I can't remember, from some writer who made some reference to alcohol being a necessary ingredient to the writing life, which it's not, mind you. But anyway, let's see. Okay, so they're writing another story, I think. Are you guys writing another story in here? I can't tell. Anyway, hey Brad, how are you? Brad says, Jeff, I like the weekly live sessions, but 3 hours is too long for me. Totally, it's 2 hours. It's too long for me too. I haven't yet gone back to rewatch any of them. Fair enough. Shorter sessions would keep us focused on the specific topics. Totally agree. There's like is like I have conflicting opinions on it, because I love the idea of like sitting down and just off the cuff talking about whatever you guys are. Should I make the screenwriting show each week shorter? Should we do this for like half an hour or 1 hour so that you could still do it? So that people could still, join and do live Q&A and stuff. I obviously wouldn't be able to get through everybody's stuff, but maybe that would be better. And then I could spend the balance of the time writing, editing, prepping, whatever specific episodes each week. I noticed that YouTube doesn't really share much of my stuff if I'm not pumping out new episodes consistently. So our viewership's gone down. Our subscribers we still get new subscribers each week, but it slows. And so it's sort of like, okay. I mean, I don't care too much about that. I mean, out of every 100 people that join us on all this kind of thing, only, 2 will actually join us and do the stuff. But it's nice to have you guys here just in case. I never know who those 2 people are going to be. It's that 5 of the 5 idea, which, if you don't know, if you're new here, I'm a big believer that out of every 100 people who have an idea for a movie, only 5 will ever actually do anything with it and start to take some action. Now, out of every 100 of those people, out of 100 of them who actually start and take some action and do something, only about 5 will actually persist and go all the way with it. Now, out of 100 of those people, only 5 of those will continue to persist until they succeed. And so I call this the 5 of the 5. And so this is the reason there is infinite opportunity for anyone who wants to actually be a professional screenwriter, because out of what you think is the competition, which is that initial 100 people, or maybe that second lot of 100 people, is really 5 of that 5. So anyway, anyway, I don't know where I came up with that idea. I pass out. Exterior fast headquarter. Day. Jeff passes out. Fade out. The end. What? I don't know what's going on here. All right. I think I've skipped over a little bit too much of your, you guys are talking about day drinking. Anyway, Desi Rabbit says, I like the long sessions. Hi, Desi. I feel like the topics that get covered that wouldn't come up otherwise. I agree. Totally agree. I'm usually only able to catch 2 hours. I know this is the challenge of it. It's like, I do feel like we just the nature of this format, we end up coming up across stuff that just I would never think to make a video about any of these things, or half of these things anyway, because just wouldn't come up. It's only in answering questions or discussing what you guys are commenting on. That's why I'm hesitant to get rid of it entirely, but I don't know how to, I don't know. When you only have comes back to the title of this one, no time for screenwriting, right? If there's no time for doing all this stuff to help screenwriters, where can I best spend those fragments of time? That's my real kind of question, I guess, what I'd love to know. Stay Wired says, is it urgent to find an agent? Absolutely, unequivocally, 100% no. You do not need to find an agent. You will need, an agent represents a writer in order to make money from earning a percentage of what the writer makes. If you are not a proven money-making writer, agents have no real huge impetus to represent you, because 10% of 0 is 0. So there's no urgency to getting an agent until you're making money as a writer. So don't worry about it. Sorry, I pushed something and something appeared on my screen. At the end of the day, you will be able to get an agent when it comes time to represent you in the deal. You should be looking for your own deals. You should be carving out your own deals. If you don't know the strategy that I talk about, the strategy that makes it entirely possible for anyone anywhere to actually succeed at this game, then follow through with weekendscreenwriting.com or fastscreenplay.com and learn what I teach, because you can do this. The key in a nutshell is you're going to want to find emerging filmmakers and get your first film made, and then have your follow-up project ready so that you dazzle them with an existing film that you have your writing by credit on. That then opens the doors, that makes them see that you are a viable writer. Until you get to that point, it's unnecessary to reach out to agents. I know it's the first step all writers want to take, and it's the first question. They're like, look online for how to get an agent, and it's like, that's what all the people that teach screenwriting are going to tell you how to do, even though it's relevant for precisely nobody, almost nobody, not nobody, but anyway. Okay, so Norman Reedus. Yes, good. Stewart, how often is it that a screenwriter has to invest money into his own material? I don't know what this means. You should invest in learning and developing your craft, in my opinion. You should buy professional screenwriting software. You should buy something like, I know this sounds, self-serving, but you should buy something like Fast Screenplay. You should buy or Essential Screenwriting. You should buy something that is going to help you and empower you, shave time off of your learning process, get you to where you're trying to go more quickly, continuously develop those skills. You should absolutely. Writing is one of these few things in the world that you just don't need to invest much money at all to be able to do. You need some sort of a basic computer to be able to write on. You need some training, a little bit of learning, maybe a guide through that process, like what I provide. You need some software to learn how to do it. That's about it. Then the real costs are going to come a little bit later, when you want to go travel to film festivals to meet directors and producers. You want to go travel to the big city to go on a meeting with an agent or a potential manager, production company, that kind of thing. This is why I suggest starting locally, so that you're building your skills locally without having to spend all that money. Those emerging filmmakers are locally. That's where the opportunity is. You're not going to connect with them until you have those skills, which is why, taking it a step back, again, I suggest investing in that. But other than that, if you're talking about investing to make your own films out of the script that you made, you can absolutely do that, but that's a whole different road you're going down. You're going down the filmmaker road, and developing the skills to produce and or direct a film that is compelling and engaging and draws people in is a whole different set of skills. And how long it's going to take you to become a great screenwriter, and how long it's going to take you to become a great director and a great producer. You're talking tripling the amount of time and work and things you need to learn and skills and all that. Like, get good at one of them. Some people are trying to get good at the other ones. You'll connect with those people. If you get good at writing, then you'll get good at writing. I do not think you should go out and make short films of your stuff, all that stuff. Like, if you're making it yourself, the takeaways are not going to be what you need. That you need someone else to make it, because you need to see how your work gets interpreted and produced and directed by other creative minds. If you're doing it yourself, well, then that's just you showing people what you had in your imagination, but that's what your words are supposed to do. So you're not actually perfecting this skill, which is the skill you're theoretically going to go out and try to earn a living from. You're trying to develop this other skill. How good are you at making those pictures? If not very good, well, it's not going to show off your work in a great light. All sorts of problems with that. So I'm just not a fan of go out and make your own short films or go out and make your own feature films. I'm a believer, having tried desperately to find writers over many, many, many years. I'm a big believer in develop the skill of writing. Get good at that. It's desperately needed by tens of thousands of people worldwide. There is so much untapped opportunity for writers, and writers want to take all these other approaches and do all these other things to somehow shortcut the process, or they think they need these other. No, get good at writing. Get good at the process. Get good at this stuff. Invest in that. That's where your money should go. My opinion. Sorry, go off on a little bit of a rant sometimes, but anyway. Okay. Screenplay. Fast Screenplay segments have Q&A feedback parts, etc. So Dimitri is suggesting, rather than doing a big 3-hour thing, we do it in segments. So this is what I was originally going to do previously. I don't know how long you guys have been subscribed to this channel, but I tried to do this thing called the Daily Prompt many years ago, and I was going to do 5 days of the week, and one day was going to be Mindset Monday, one day was going to be whatever the insight was going to be that week, Tuesday, and then we're going to have Q&A Wednesday, and then we're going to have, those kinds of things. And it's just, I just did not, there was no way to do anything other than that stuff. Even though that stuff looks terrible, I look back at it now, I go, the information's great. It just doesn't look great. They're still 15, 20 minute videos each time. So nobody watches those either. So it's like, oh yeah. It's just hard it's hard to do things shorter when you don't have a big team. And the only way I get a team is if people join me. And since people don't join me, it is what it is. It's all good. We'll get there. I'll make it work. Don't worry. But okay, we have another vote for shorter videos would be better. Cool. All right. I'm going to miss you guys. No, I'm not going to go right away because I still got to do all this for the, to create the modules. So we're still going to do this for deep dive modules. Maybe I'll shorten this up and just have it be like a 1 hour thing. I still want to then turn those into a sharper little 5-10 minute video of just sort of the highlights. Anyway, we'll see. Yeah. So basically, yeah, an hour each week focused on that topic, and then maybe stay online a little bit to answer Q&A. That doesn't necessarily get us into some of this free flowing stuff. I think some of the coolest things out of this have popped up because a question comes up that I just wasn't thinking about or had never thought about. And so I'm always frustrated at the thought of losing that, because that is where I can see what you guys need, what you guys want, maybe the fears or the concerns or the opportunities or whatever that you guys see that maybe I wouldn't see. Like, I'm in my own little bubble over here thinking, I know what I think writers need. I'm going to give writers what I think they need. But at the end of the day, what do you think you need? What do you want? What do you want from me? Like, the more you guys can give me that, the more we're going to come up with a survey. And next week, I'm hoping to have a survey ready that you guys can answer a survey and tell me what kinds of things you want to learn and what have you. But it's just always a challenge to try to figure some of that stuff out. So, Queen Anonymous ASMR, can you make a video, or have you already made a video of the basic format of screenplay, like how to transition from character to character and how to move to the scene to the next? There probably are videos on this channel. I know there's step 15 of the setup phase is a deep dive into script formatting. And the reason we have it at step 15 of the setup phase is the first 10 steps are all about getting your mindset ready. So you're setting yourself on consistent, ongoing daily action. So the way Fast Screenplay is laid out is we dig into the insights as you need them in the process. So people like a question like an agent, for example, and not to single out whoever it was that asked the agent question, but like a question like getting an agent, or a question like selling to a studio, or these kinds of things. Like, these kinds of questions are great, and I get why writers want to know those things, but they're so far down the road. Like, to even fill your head with that stuff at early on, before you're ready for that stuff, is really getting in the way of the thing you need to do right now. And if you don't write at all, the first thing you need to do is set yourself up to write. And so the beginning of that process, setup phase part of that process, is setting yourself up to write. Once you've set yourself up to write, you started to build a little bit of a daily habit with it. Then that's when we jump into how story works, and how to break down story, and how we're going to move through all this so that we can go piece by piece. So we start to learn what a screenplay is, what a screenplay is, what it's about, why it exists, who it's for, all that kind of stuff. And then we look at the format, because then you have the proper perspective on it, right? So if it's just about what do I put where, you can go to Celtics or Final Draft or Writer Duet or whatever, all these different screenwriting softwares, and just download the software. You can usually do free trials of all of them, and you can just see how the format's laid out. Just what goes where on the page, to my thinking, it doesn't matter. We don't need to know. Like, it's all kind of done for you, right? The key is to know why it's done that way. to know what's the thinking behind that. How does doing it that way change or affect, or how can you use it to tell a better story? How does it impact the creative part of the process? And that's the stuff that I believe needs to kind of be in place before we even talk about formatting. So I don't actually think I have just a straight formatting video on this channel at the moment. There will be one when we do it for the module for Essential Screenwriting is a deep dive in this show. I do it extensively on the Weekend Screenwriting Workshop, which is weekendscreenwriting.com. I do it on the step 15 in the setup phase for Fast Screenplay. Both of those go deep into it. You'll have all your questions answered. They can answer all your questions in one simple step because that's just all there is to it. So the real challenge and the real hard part and the important stuff is much more into storytelling and building character and creating effective dialogue. Because just making it look right on the page, I can still see instantly, just looking at the page, if you formatted that page correctly, everything is formatted correctly. If that's your first time doing it, you don't know what those different elements on the page are for, why they're done that way, I will instantly know that you're a new writer, and I will instantly know that this is probably not going to be a strong screenplay. That's how quickly, after reading 7,000 screenplays, I can see this stuff. So it's only of limited value. So anyway, that's where to go find that stuff. There are people online who have certainly laid out the script format. That's something you could probably Google or YouTube and find it pretty easily. So, okay, got cut off. Where were we? I don't know. Oh, Tobias got cut off. Jeff, when do we know we are great screenwriters? When you're happy with what you've written. I would say when do we know? It's a trick. One of those trick questions. What a meaning of life kind of questions. So I'm not going to shy away from it, but I would say, you're a great screenwriter when the screenplay you read back is a screenplay that you believe has told the story you want to tell in an objectively effective way. I would say if other people agree with you, that's when you're truly a great screenwriter. But the first step is you have to believe that this is the very best I can do and this works. If you set it aside for a year and you come back to it and you go, I would not change a word of this, I think you're there. I don't think you're necessarily there on every project, but you're there on that project. And this is the thing. What's going to happen is the next year, you will have learned more. You will have experienced more in your life. You'll have more wisdom. You'll have more perspective. You'll have a wider view on the world. And so you'll see this thing that you wrote last year through different eyes. And those different eyes will just have a different take on everything. And that's when you start to look at it and go, ooh, I need to change this or that. That's why when we look back at scripts we wrote 15 years ago, we cringe. We think, oh, geez, I actually sent this out to people. Yeah, because at the time, that's where we were. So I think as a human being, we always evolve. You should at least strive to always evolve and get better and better at your craft. And because of that, I don't think you should ever consider yourself to be a great screenwriter, but I think that is when you will actually be a great screenwriter. So hopefully that, you guys trying to throw me these curveballs. I see what you're doing. All right, let's see. Okay, so have you ever written any films that you're proud of? I would love to go watch and get some inspiration for your work. Stay wired. If you're talking about me, the answer is nothing that's been produced. I did write something. I don't know. I about half wrote something that I would be very proud of. The one that I did write that we got made, I'm proud of, but not as a writer, not as a storyteller. Just the fact that we actually took it all the way. Like I said, we did have to abandon it after 7 years because it wasn't. No. So also keep in mind, I have not written anything since probably the early 2000s because my focus has been entirely on trying to get writers to write, because my focus has been on producing, directing, and building the indie film studio. I didn't realize when I started down this road that it would be this hard to convince writers to take action. I thought if I could help writers see the opportunity that's in front of us, the opportunity that I want to be with them making something to capture, I just thought more people would follow through and do it. And it's been the continuous shock of my life that writers don't follow through and that writers don't take this serious and don't really do it. And I know I try not to be too pessimistic and negative. I want to inspire you and not make you feel bad about inaction or worried about the challenge ahead of you. I think it's all eminently doable. I think I want you to be inspired by the fact that very few writers follow through. And that means that by definition, if you follow through, you can succeed at this. I'm still waiting, to be honest with you. So it's, you look at my IMDb page today, it's embarrassing. It's bad. There's nothing for years and years. And most of it's acting stuff from years ago. And it's, why? Because I've wanted to build this. And so I've spent the past 20 years focused on trying to help writers do this. I thought we would 3 to 5 years into it, I thought we'd be making films. So that's my first burnout place, where 3 to 5 years of it and writers just didn't do anything in Australia. And so I gave it up. I quit. I went and started a film festival. I just had to take a break from it. So, but that didn't solve the problem. And that's why I came back into it. And still, writers don't necessarily follow through. And I want to get inspired from my own work as well. So, the other part of that question, though, is have you written films that I'm proud of? And to be honest, I have not written anything. And I don't really want to write. That's not my passion anymore. My passion is to get you guys to write so that I can go produce and direct. My whole thing since I was a kid was to direct. I always wanted to be a director, which is ironic because my primary thing is being a producer at this point. And I probably made the most money out of it being a writer. So it's like... or acting, I guess, but that stopped a long time ago too. So, still talking about vodka. Let's see. Thanks. But you nailed it on the head. Oh, cool. Movie I kind of compared to is a La La Land, where you have two characters who have similar arcs that wrap around each other, and it's pushing each other for their goals. So if you have a story like La La Land where you have the two different characters, so that kind of a thing is it's not about screen time. It's about what's the dynamic between the two and what's the story you're trying to tell. When you're trying to tell a love story, when you're trying to tell a love story, you want to feature both, but you don't just want to feature both. You want each of the characters in the story to, we as the audience need to care about them and want them to be with each other. So if you're only featuring the one person and the other person's kind of not even there, how are we going to fall in love with that person? Right. So, and if it's too, like in that story, this one has this focus and this one's a slightly different focus and they're kind of at odds. And so they're kind of passing each other a little bit. That's, you need to see both in order to convey that meaning. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, let's see. When other people read my screenplays, I always asked if they could envisage clearly what was happening while they were reading without getting confused. That's definitely one part of what feedback's all about. My feedback process involves sending your work out to probably a minimum of about 20 people. And the more the merrier, by the way, because you want to get consensus. So, and it's not just about understanding if it's clear, you want their actual feedback, what they liked, what they didn't like. And that's going to help you. If you learn how to investigate the notes and the feedback, we do this in the alignment phase of FAST. If you understand how to investigate the notes and the feedback, you'll be able to decipher what they actually like or dislike, or problems or issues that they might have with the script. And through consensus, you can start to see what some actual issues with your project are. Because if this person loves this character and that person hates that character, you're not going to want to change it based on who likes what or who doesn't like what. But clarity is certainly part of it. But what you actually want to know through feedback is your project landing the way you want it to land? Is it having the impact you want it to have? And sometimes that's going to be a very nuanced thing. And it's going to be like, well, yes, it kind of is, but it's not really hitting it effectively. And so I'm going to need to strengthen this aspect of the nuance of it, right? That's going to make it the impact stronger on the effect that I want it to have. And you may only know what that nuance is or how to adjust that impact through investigating the notes and the feedback that you get, which is why that's, in my opinion, by far the most important and powerful phase of them all. It works in conjunction with the strengthen phase, the rewrite phase. If you can master the rewrite process, you will be a professional screenwriter. It's that simple. It's hard, it's challenging, it takes time to learn and do well. But if you can take a weak draft and make it strong, you have an income potential. you can earn a living out of it. Staywire says, my name is Femi Boyle. I've learned a lot about your channel about screenwriting. I just want you to know I love your content so much. You're truly appreciated and don't even know it. You're right, I don't know it. But I very much appreciate you telling me it because very, very often I wonder if this just goes out into the ether. Nobody knows, nobody cares. So comments like this are very much appreciated. Thank you. That's very, very kind and very appreciated. Dimitri added, Jeff's a hidden gem. Woohoo! I'm going to, I need some testimonials. Anybody who's in FAST wants to give me a testimonial, let me know. I want to start doing some stuff because I realized I suck at asking people to tell me nice things. So anyway, okay, so let's see. I'm now back, reading. Jeff's reading. Oh, probably better drink. Yes, definitely. Should the opening scene connect to the final scene in some way? Each scene should link to the ones following, vice versa. So this is one of those questions that my initial response is yes, but my immediately following response is it totally depends. So this is one of those kinds of questions that is like, should this dynamic or this element or this thing be included or not? Or you guys got to understand, there's no such thing as right or wrong in screenwriting and storytelling. There is no such thing as right or wrong. There never is, there never has been, there never will be. And the reason is because this is entirely subjective. You can tell a story that's never been told before, or that has been told 100 times before. Every story is unique. If to bookend your story or have the final scene be a direct answer or directly address that opening scene, that may be the perfect way to bookend your story. That may be the way to create closure on this thing. It may tie your story together. Away you go. Might be a little pat for certain kinds of stories. And yeah, we'd rather it sort of, because the characters don't move in a straight line, it'd be nice if it ends with the character going off in this direction. We need to have some sense of finality to the story, but that's more through showing how a character has changed or a situation has changed or whatever is different from the beginning to the end. It doesn't necessarily need to be a direct reflection of that in some way. But each scene should not necessarily link to the ones before or after. You can certainly cut away and have different things going on, but there does need to be some sort of connection between everything in your story. The way I always like to put it is every single detail in your story, absolutely every single detail, is connected and interconnected to every other detail in your story. If any one detail was out of place, that story would play out differently. And because of that, you need to know that every little piece impacts upon every other little piece. This is what makes rewriting so hard, and why most writers just stick their head in the sand and go, la, 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 I don't know about rewriting, because if I start pulling this thread over here, the whole thing can unravel over here, right? We've used that metaphor on this show before. So the big challenge is, how do you make these changes? And my way is to look at, to take the whole process, break it down into 7 distinct levels, and then go through it from broad to narrow. So it's the bigger picture stuff, the whole story, the act level, the scene level, dialogue level, the experience level. And in that way, you're evaluating your whole story from these different levels, and you can see how they push and pull on all the other levels. And it's very complex, and it takes us a couple months to go through in the system. So it's not something I can just sort of like spit out and give you as a takeaway here. But that is how you make sure everything is connected, because it does need to be connected in some way. You can't just have them randomly go off and do some stray thing that has nothing to do with the story, because we as the audience are going, what does that have to do with anything? And the second the audience goes, what happened? Why did we just take a 10-minute sojourn to some place or meet some character that has nothing to do with anything at all? It makes the audience, whether consciously or subconsciously, intuitively, feel like this storyteller doesn't know what they're doing. They've just given me meandering information. From a story standpoint, from an audience standpoint, we're assuming every little detail is important. Every little detail is needed to get the whole picture of the story. That's kind of the implicit promise of a story, is that every detail matters. So pay attention to every detail. If you start giving us details that don't matter, well, then we disconnect. We feel there are holes. We step back. We no longer care. The story falls apart at the seams. So yes, but it's also, it depends on the story as to how that plays out and how you implement that. Hopefully that makes sense. Thanks, Debbie. We're glad you stuck it out for us, Jeff. Okay, cool. Listen, I stick it out for you guys, but let's be perfectly honest, I stick it out for me too, right? Like, I want the thing that I envision. I want the film studio, not just because it's going to provide writers a springboard to learn how the thing they wrote gets turned into a film and what lessons they take to that to apply to their, but also because I get to make lots of films. My passion is making films. It has been since I was a little tiny kid, like 8 years old. I remember dreaming about making movies and TV. So like, I want to make lots of stuff. And so my whole thing is, I want to create a win-win scenario. I want to create something that benefits you, that by benefiting you also benefits me. So, or by benefiting me, you also benefit out of it. So that's what I'm kind of going for here. So it's, so I don't want to make it seem like I'm just entirely altruistic here. I want to, I want to spend all my days, all the rest of the days of my life, just making movies and going from project to project and having a hand in lots of different films. That's my goal. That's what I would love to do, because I would be tapping into stories from all around the world. I would be introduced to different cultures. I would be introduced to different perspectives and worldviews, and it would expand my mind and my imagination. This is, this largely selfish as well. So let's do it. Do it for me, if not for you, right? Develop your skills for Jeff, if nothing else. Oh boy. Okay. Well, let's keep going. I think we're nearing to the end of the chat. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but I'm glad you're here again as well. Cramco Kelly. Is that right? Cramco Kelly? Cramcoke Ellie? K-Ram? Anyway. It's glad to see you here. Let's see. And by the way, Dimitri, Tobias, I know that you guys are there's a lot of stuff I'm skipping. You know that I appreciate you guys immensely, and I am not in any way skipping all your great stuff. I actually love it. Synopsis first and Okay. Well, how about if we do this? No, there's only 15 minutes left. I don't want to give you, I don't want to shortchange you. Now I feel bad because I should. I'll tell you what, next week, what I'll do is I will definitely do this synopsis. I'll read through it. Because what I really want to do with the synopsis, I don't know if you guys have watched the old feedback loop episodes on this channel. If you haven't, they're great. It's like hidden gems like this. But I spend an hour going over the first 3 pages of a different writer's script each week. There's 12 episodes of them. We actually have the writer on the call. So as I'm going through it, I'm discussing with the writer what their intentions were and all that stuff. And so it's a nice deep dive into those first 3 pages, a whole hour just devoted to 3 pages of a writer's work. We can really get to the bottom of, what they're doing and how the different techniques and all this kind of stuff. They're definitely worth watching, making time for. But what I kind of wanted to do with your synopsis was, obviously not having you on the call, but a similar kind of thing where I could go through and say, here's what I'm getting from this and here. And I had meant to do this at about 4 and it's now 4:45 and I'm just not going to have time. So, but I will, I promise, next week. Okay. So Tobias says, what's the most major and serious flaw in the screenplays of new writers? What's the most major and serious flaw in the screenplay of new writers? It really depends on the writer. They are vast and varied. Probably that's a good question. What's the most major and serious flaw? I don't think there's a most major and serious flaw. I think most screenplays miss the mark because they're not telling me, they're not putting a movie in my imagination. The formatting can be right, but so I'll give you an example. So I was reading this one script one time and it starts off with I think like an opening slug line and like one line of description, and then like characters are talking. And immediately, like, there's like 4 different characters talking. And I'm like, I think they were sitting around a campfire or something like that. And immediately, I'm lost immediately because I don't know who's who. I don't know what's what. I don't know where we are. Like the slug line, that didn't tell me enough. Like, I don't know what's going on here. So in my imagination, all I'm seeing are shadow figures, like silhouettes, no face, no nothing. These silhouettes moving. And then we cut to like a hallway and these 2 silhouettes, maybe from the earlier scene, I don't know, are talking. So like 3 pages, 5 pages in, I'm like, this is impossible for me to ever understand. The writer clearly knows who the characters are. The writer clearly knows what's happening in the scene, but they have not presented me with a story. They haven't presented me with the movie. They've simply written down what they see in their head with no regard to what I see in my head. So if there was one most major and serious flaw, I guess that would be it. It's that you're not writing for what I see in my head. You're writing for what you see in your head. Yeah, I'll go with that. We can go deeper into that on another episode or something, but or hang on to that one and we'll come back to that at some point in the future. But that would be probably the most major and serious flaw. Yeah, I like that. Actually, I might try to remember that and write it down or make another video about it or something. Cram Kelly says, I am in the middle of a rewrite for my screenplay adaptation, The Grizzly. I have got conflicting feedback from 3 professional sources through film festivals or contests, but rewrite has to be done. Well, so this is the problem, right? So this is kind of what I was saying earlier and why I'm a believer that, I always feel like it probably comes across as self-serving, but you guys, you need to do fast screenplay. Fast screenplay is so much better than you imagine it would ever even possibly be. You think it's a screenwriting course. You've done screenwriting courses and read books, and so you don't think you need it. I'm telling you now, if you had been through fast screenplay and you'd been through the alignment phase of the process, which is the 6th out of 7 phases, so you spent a year to get to that point, probably. It's arduous. It's going to take you time. It's hard. It's not easy. it's more than you think it's going to be. But if you understand that alignment phase, that sending your work out for notes and feedback, not just getting notes and feedback and getting opinions, 3 different conflicting opinions may be saying the same thing. What may be happening here is that you might not have the tools, the skills to be able to investigate what is the common denominator with those 3 sets of notes, that feedback. There may be a common denominator here. And I don't know, I can't know I don't know your script. You might know, but you need to develop that skill. You need to be able to see what the consensus is, because if one person loves a story and another person doesn't love the story, it's possible that the person who doesn't love the story didn't understand something that if they understood it would love it as much as the other person. And then that would be the thing you would need to go in it and make sure it's clear, because maybe somebody skipped over it. Maybe just the way you formatted the words on the page, one reader skipped over it and didn't see that key idea. And now they don't like your story, or they give you conflicting feedback because they don't understand what the other person who was reading carefully saw and got out of your story, right? So it's things like that you won't know to look for that unless you've been through the tweak phase, in which you won't know until you've been through the strengthen phase. So it's like you need that stuff leading up to that point. But having those skills and being able to then rewrite with that stuff, you will be able to address conflicting feedback. You'll be able to take even feedback that is negative and understand why the person didn't like it or why they gave you the negative feedback. Recognize that, okay, so they maybe don't like the subject matter or the theme or some aspect of your story, but that's key to what you're trying to say. So it's okay that some people might not like it, right? I don't know what it is. And chances are you don't know either, because you're seeing it as conflicting, right? So it's essential to learn and understand and master these skills. There is literally no way to learn these skills other than the system that I built. And I know this because that's why I built it. I did not build Fast Screenplay to create a screenwriting course. It's not a screenwriting course. I didn't create it because I want to make some money here, because I have not made it. I've lost money, lots of money over the years with this thing. The reality is this is what's needed. You have to have the process. You have to have all these skills to be able to decipher those notes and feedback. Nobody else teaches notes and feedback and deciphering notes and feedback and getting that stuff. Why? Because nobody's ever seen it from my perspective and gone, as a producer looking for material, I've had to figure this stuff out so that I could help writers be able to do this stuff. So it's not often, if you're new here, it's not often that I go off on a rant and say the solution is, do Fast Screenplay. But the solution is do Fast Screenplay. I know that's not okay. And you've probably been, if you're getting feedback through festivals and contests, you've probably been doing this a while. You're looking at Fast Screenplay. I don't need another one of those things. Fair enough. But there is a skill set. Writers do not know. They do not know. They do not have. It's a gap in your knowledge. And I'm telling you, I can talk about it all day. I can teach you the principles of it all day. But until you understand it in the context of the process, it's always going to be a struggle. So yes, the rewrite has to be done, but there is a way to do this rewrite. There's a way to take all this notes, conflicting notes and feedback, and feed it right into a rewrite process that will make it instant, doable. You'll be able to see exactly how to make that happen. That rewrite process will become intuitive. That's what I built. That's what I try to do. So, anyway, sorry I got fired up about that, but it's one of those things where it's like, if you guys could understand from my perspective how much the production company, people who would go on to make your film, how much they need you to have these skills, you would understand that this isn't just like something that, hey, it would be great to learn and to know how to do it. It's literally the thing that's going to make or break a professional. And yes, people can learn this without doing Fast Screenplay. People have learned how to do this without doing Fast Screenplay for years and years and years. But it'll take you 10 years to learn how to do something that I'll teach you how to do in 2 years. So 2 years, oh my God, I don't want to devote 2 years to this. But okay, then spend 10. Like that's the challenge that I have. It's not just that I want you to do it. It's that you need those skills. Professionals need those skills, and getting to those skills is a hard thing to do. And I don't know anyone who knows how to do it or who teaches it. So anyway, sorry to get very animated. Sometimes I get very animated when I talk. It's because I'm passionate, not because I am in any way feeling anything from or about you and what you bring to it. I'm so happy to have you here, and I hope this is a helpful answer to you. I'm going to call you Kelly or Cram. Or K-Ram. I'm just going to call you Kelly. So thank you for that question. I hope that's a helpful answer to you. And anyway, let's see. That's sick on the main character killed off halfway through the film. Not something that should be done often. Again, it all depends on what you're trying to say. The thing that people don't understand is it's not about if your character gets killed off in the middle of the film. It's not about, like, everyone thinks the story is this 3-act hero-driven story, and that's not what story has to be. You can kill your main character off in the middle of the story, but your story is about something other than your main character's journey if you do that. Or it might seem like it's about your character's journey, but then they get killed off and suddenly it's about this other thing. Well, guess what? The whole thing was about this other thing. So now how does that initial part of that journey impact upon what it is actually about? What's that saying about what it's actually about? That's then what your story is about. It's always about understanding what you're trying to say, what the story you're telling actually is. So, it's not about doing it often or not often. It's about what's right for your story. Writing is rewriting. Absolutely true. I know it's almost cliche, but it is absolutely true. Let's see. Jeff, we are not offended. We'll see. No one's motivations are Desi. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate that, Desi. Again, not necessary, and I will read your comment regardless, but always appreciate it. Thank you so much. And keep up the great work. I know you're doing great work. I know you got, you're climbing that mountain, and I'm there with you every step of the way and cheering you on, because you will get where you're trying to go. Just hang in there and believe in yourself, because it's yours for the taking. Okay, so oh man, another week. See, Dimitri's like desperate to get me to read the have another look at it based on what I said and see what you think. Let's see. If I were to send you my logline, would you be willing to discuss it? Not one-on-one, but on the show. If you want to send a logline in, send it to the Screenwriting Show. Let me see if this one does. Send it there. Oh crap! I didn't think about how these two would be together. Send it to screenwritingshow@gmail.com if you have any questions, you want to volunteer, you're ready to submit something for feedback. If you send in your log line to that, I may go over it in a future episode where I go through some of the stuff. I have not done any of that stuff to date, so do not hold that against me if that doesn't happen super soon. But as Dimitri will tell you, it's super frustrating to send me something and I just don't go over it each week. So, but I don't send me anything, anywhere, for one-on-one feedback, because I don't do that. And in fact, don't even look at it. I will delete things unread unless they're sent to that email address, which again is this. Other than stuff sent here for this show, I delete everything unread, just because I have a very strict policy not to review, not to look over unsolicited submissions. So, okay, so we're coming up right on the end of our time here together, my friends. So I'm going to skim through and see if there's anything more. Oh, we got to the end. Awesome. So tea and crumpets. How do we get on tea and crumpets? Fish and chips and tea and crumpets, biscuits and tea. What are you guys talking about? All right. Hey, look, I actually got to the end of it. That's because we have 24 people on. So if anyone has any final questions for me, pop them in the chat box now, and it'll be like almost live that I'm talking about them. So if you if you have any specific questions about anything, I know today we were going to be talking about you have no time to write screenplays. We started off with my little rant at the beginning. Then, of course, we go off in whatever direction and so on and so forth. Well, it's not about let's do the synopsis because there's only 23 people. It's because literally it's 2 minutes until my hard out, which my hard out is about 5 minutes after. And I want to give you more time than that because, you know, you've been waiting. So you deserve a little bit more than just a quick skim through, right? Hey, do you like that? I did the lower third. You should see the ending screen when I say goodbye. I got stuff on there. Anyway, it's not about reading quickly. It's about giving you feedback that's helpful to you and beneficial to the larger group. So, no time to write screenplays. Here's the thing. I'm going to make a prediction right now. The week ahead is going to have interruptions that you do not currently expect. So what are you going to do about that? How are you going to make sure that you get your writing done and you keep moving forward? You keep developing your skill. You keep taking action. You keep building your habit. You keep incrementally stepping forward toward your ultimate goals and your ambitions. You build those neural pathways. How are you going to ensure that you do that in the week ahead, knowing full well that the time you have blocked aside for writing will probably get chewed up, at least some of it will, by other things. Interruptions, laziness, procrastination, just not having my friendly voice in your ear because you're not doing fast screenplay. Because if you did, you'd just watch a video on there. What? I don't know. Jeff 1. Jeff 1 is the name of a spaceship in Dimitri and Tobias's magnum opus that I will be reading next week. So if you can join me next week, that will be fantastic. If you can't, please, I'm not kidding. If you haven't joined Fast Screenplay, I 100% promise you that it will transform your career. It will change more than you think about your life. It is designed to do that. I believe that writers' source material is their life. Your life, your experience, your dreams, your imagination, your interactions with other people. That's your source material. So all of us have a unique perspective and a unique window on the world. The system, the process of going through and turning an idea into not just a screenplay, but a viable screenplay. The process of doing that is a process that we go through that trains us for life in a way. You're going to see more out of all the little details of your life. You're going to develop skills that will get you where you're trying to go faster. Hopefully, ideally, you will complete the process and join us in the writer's room where we'll all write a project and we'll select at least one. You'll get paid for all of them and we'll go out and actually make the film, and you'll see the difference between just putting something on the page and turning something into a script. And you'll be able to use all that knowledge and insight on your next projects, which go increasingly fast and intuitive. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. We'll be here as long as you are. Do we have a career? What? All right. So we're going to leave it at that then, guys, before this gets too out of hand. It's time for you guys in the chat who are going to have your vodka, and we'll call it a day. So thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for being a part of it. Thank you for the couple of super chats that came along, and join me next week where we'll be here 2 p.m. Thursday, August. I think it's the 5th. I think I know it'll be on the closing wall here. So thanks, guys. We'll see you soon. I appreciate it.